Chapter 24:08 Hidden Hibernation. The 9 unearthly divine beasts were formed from the wishes of all living beings. They were only awakened after sacrificing the life and cultivation of an emperor ancestor. Lin Sun couldn't help but shiver at such an unfathomable method. The Nirvana emperor ancestor seems to have perished, but his spirit has already merged with the hidden hibernation divine beast. Isn't this a rebirth? This is what he's been seeking to break through to the Emperor Ancestor realm. Void Wind Buddha Emperor murmured in the distance, a rare hint of fanaticism in his eyes. Lin Sun, hurry up and destroy that Black Buddha shrine. Otherwise, even if I kill this beast, its power will be absorbed by the Ksitigarbha Emperor's statue. It's very likely that he'll be able to form a golden body of merit and come back to life from the eternal nirvana. Xi's voice shook Lin Sun. So the faceless Buddha statue really was the image of the founder of the Hidden Land Realm. The Hidden Land Realm had been collecting the wishes of all living beings for countless years to help the Ksitigarbha Emperor form a golden body of merit and become a god in the nirvana. Lin Sun moved across the void almost immediately and flew toward the Black Buddha shrine in the distance. Suppress. Void Wind Buddha Emperor raised his hand, and the black prayer beads rose into the air, drawing on the forbidden power of order to attack Lin Sun. In front of Lin Sun, the abyssal sword cauldron glowed and emitted a magnificent orderly aura that clashed with the opponent. Rumble, the prayer beads, and the sword cauldron collided like two kinds of order power fighting, producing a destructive torrent of power. You also control the power of order. Void Wind Buddha Thearka's eyes narrowed, as if he was surprised. His cold and indifferent expression turned serious. Previously, he thought that Xi's existence had played a crucial role in Lin Sun being able to destroy the divine Sunshine Ancient Sect. Otherwise, it would have been wishful thinking for a 4th-level Emperor Juing to destroy the divine Sunshine Ancient Sect. But now, Void Wind Buddha Emperor suddenly realized that he had overestimated Xi and underestimated Lin Sun's combat power. Kill. Without hesitation, Void Wind Buddha Emperor attacked Lin Sun with all his might. Boom! Phantoms of Buddhas floated around him. Some were sitting in the 9 heavens, some were smiling while holding flowers, some were glaring angrily, and some had their backs to all living beings. Void Wind Buddha Thearka's aura also rose to the extreme. He was like the ruler of a pure land of Buddha, controlling the supreme Buddha Dharma and guiding the forbidden order. It was extremely terrifying. Crossing adversity is the guide, and those who refuse to come to their senses will be doomed. He chanted, and the forbidden power of order in the sky turned into divine chains, wrapping around the string of black Buddhas and shrouding them. Everywhere they passed, the void space collapsed and exploded. That kind of power was boundlessly terrifying. Lin Sun collided head-on with the sword cauldron. The Taoist sword roared furiously, and the sword Qi swept out with boundless brilliance. Faintly, there seemed to be a phoenix cry that resounded through the heavens and the earth. This was the power of the orderly phoenix flame, and it was being released to the extreme at this moment. Boom! The two fought fiercely, and in an instant, they had clashed hundreds of times. The sky darkened, the sun and the moon lost their light, and there was a terrifying scene of collapse and destruction everywhere. This made Void Wind Buddha Emperor's expression become more and more solemn. He never thought that even after controlling the forbidden power of order and exhausting all his cultivation to kill, he still couldn't do anything to Lin Sun, a 4th-level Emperor Realm Juing Emperor. At the same time, Lin Sun couldn't help but frown. If it wasn't for the forbidden power of order, a character like Void Wind Buddha Emperor wouldn't be able to stop his killing. Open! Lin Sun shouted, and his cultivation ran to the extreme. His body was boiling like an abyss, and there was a terrifying momentum that could swallow the heavens and earth. He controlled the abyssal Taoist sword and performed no return to the extreme. Void Wind Buddha Emperor's pupil shrank. He sensed the terror of this sword and was about to resist with all his strength. A vast expanse of white light and shadow was suddenly released in front of Lin Sun, making the whole world still for a moment. Puff! There was a muffled groan. Void Wind Buddha Emperor raised his head with difficulty. His eyes were in a trance, and he said bitterly, "The legendary second stage of the Devouring Abyss talent really exists." Before he finished speaking, a line of blood spread from the top of his head along the bridge of his nose, lips, chin, throat, and chest. Then his body split into two halves and split in the void. Before the fresh blood could pour out, it turned into ashes inch by inch and drifted away. Bang! The string of black Buddha beads fell to the ground, stirring up smoke and dust. They cracked and scattered on the ground, losing all their light and spirituality. Lin Sun took a deep breath and rushed straight to the black Buddha shrine in the distance without looking. Roar! The hidden hibernation beast, who was fighting fiercely with She, let out a deafening roar. It was as if it was greatly provoked and wanted to stop Lin Sun. How could she let it do as it wished? He attacked with all his strength. A spear of order splashed out an overwhelming rain of light, suppressing the hidden hibernation beast. For a moment, the hidden hibernation beast roared furiously, but it couldn't get away. Lin Sun had already arrived in front of the Black Buddha shrine. He glanced at the statue of Ksitigarbha Emperor, took a deep breath, and activated the sword cauldron. Boom! The sword cauldron engulfed the sky with a monstrous divine brilliance. The abyssal Taoist sword hummed, accumulating unprecedented power. However, at this moment, a strange scene occurred. In the Black Buddha shrine, the tightly closed eye on the forehead of the faceless Buddha statue suddenly opened at this moment. It was like a blazing sun had suddenly appeared in the night sky, releasing boundless light that covered the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Boom! In an instant, Lin Sun felt a stabbing pain in his soul. His figure swayed, as if he had fallen into a boundless world of darkness. In this boundless world, there was a faceless Buddha. Its figure was like a pillar supporting the sky, holding up a part of the sky. Even the starry sky could not cover it. It was too majestic and vast, like the Lord of the universe, guarding the heavens. It was immortal and indestructible, eternal and boundless. The eye on its forehead was like the sun, illuminating the heavens alone. Compared to it, everything in the world was as insignificant as a drop in the ocean. Anyone who saw it would be completely awed and in awe. They could only kneel on the ground and worship devoutly. After the initial shock, Lin Sun's state of mind was as deep as an abyss. The light of the emperor dispelled all the shock and influence. His pupils shrank. Looking at the faceless Buddha sitting in the heavens, he said indifferently, "If my guess is right, this should be an illusory world formed by the will of all living beings. The soul can see it and the mind can feel it, but it's just an illusion after all. My young friend, your state of mind is always illuminated by the Emperor's light. It's really rare and precious." A voice rang out, like the sound of Sanskrit, which went straight to the heart. "If you convert to me, you will be able to prove eternity and enjoy infinite freedom in the future." Every word was full of peace and mercy. When Lin Sun heard it, his state of mind was in turmoil. For a moment, he was about to be subdued and submit completely. But it was only for a moment. As Lin Sun ran his cultivation, his state of mind was like a rock, suppressing all the waves, and all the thoughts in his body returned to calmness and calmness. For countless years, you have used this bewitching method to manipulate the will of all living beings for your own use, so that those disciples and disciples in the hidden land realm are firmly controlled and driven by you, right? Lin Sun showed a sneer. If it were an ordinary emperor, maybe their state of mind would be occupied by you and completely enslaved. But for me, it's not worth mentioning at all. His black eyes were clear, his figure was tall and straight, and his mind was clear and pure. He became calmer and calmer. After a short period of silence, countless figures suddenly surged out from this dark world. They were densely packed, and they spread out ceaselessly. 100,000, 1 million, 10 million. Among these figures, There were ordinary people of the secular world, men and women, old and young, rich and poor, nobles, generals and ministers, and all kinds of people. There were also cultivators whose cultivation ranged from the lower five realms to the king realm, the saint realm, the quasi-emperor realm, and the emperor realm. In the end, the heavens above and below were filled with figures. They filled the surrounding void, numbering in the tens of billions. As soon as these figures appeared, they knelt down, kowtowed devoutly, and chanted, "The land illuminated by Ksitigarbha, the eternal kingdom of the emperor." The neat and uniform voice resounded through the whole world, shocking people. Do you see that? These are the living beings who have pledged their allegiance to me. Their will is my will, and their life and death is my life and death. You might have the power to kill me, but if I die, these living beings will perish with me. The voice sounded again, grand and ethereal. This means that you can slaughter billions of living beings in this world with a single thought. Lin Daoyuan, I'm afraid you can't bear such a bloody crime at all. Swish! Countless living beings looked at Lin Sun in unison. Even though he knew that it was an illusion, Lin Sun's eyes narrowed suddenly. The living beings in front of him must be the owners of the will of all living beings collected by the Hidden Land realm for countless years. Each of them was a living being in this world. There were hundreds of millions of them, which was unimaginably huge. Even if Lin Sun had fought for many years and slaughtered countless enemies, he was afraid that he could not compare to the living beings in front of him. Collect the will of all living beings to build the golden body of merit. In this way, you can replace the will of all living beings with your own will and enslave them. This method may let you come back to life from nirvana, or it may let you take a step beyond the Emperor Ancestor realm. Lin Sun sighed, and his eyes were calm. Unfortunately, it's just a crooked way after all. The grand voice sounded again. Those who refuse to realize their mistakes are heretics, and all living beings in this world will not forgive you. As soon as the voice died away, the hundreds of millions of living beings in the whole world all stood up and rushed to Lin Sun, without hesitation, as if they were staring at their enemies. Boom! This world was in turmoil. Hundreds of millions of living beings went to battle together. That scene could make anyone desperate, as if they were the enemy of the whole world. I only know that you haven't really built the golden body of merit, Lin Sun said calmly and walked forward. His body was flowing with ethereal Taoist light, and his clothes were fluttering in the wind. He was calm and composed, looking at the overwhelming living beings as if they were nothing. Just like that, he walked toward the faceless Buddha that guarded the heavens. Along the way, the crowd was surging from all directions, like an endless dark ocean, trying to drown and devour a small duckweed like him walking against the current. Chapter 24:09. The duckweed would rise and fall with the stormy waves and even be submerged. But Lin Sun was not a duckweed. He went straight ahead. People were surging in all directions. The power of all living beings was like a raging wave, but it couldn't even touch his clothes. After all, this was an illusory world created by the power of all living beings. And the Emperor Ksitigarbha, who was in charge of the heavens in the distance, didn't really build the golden body of merit after all. It was destined that he couldn't come back to life from nirvana. Otherwise, why would he use such an illusory world to deal with Lin Sun? It was just a joke. In the void of the heavens, the towering Emperor Ksitigarbha seemed to have realized that something was wrong. He let out a long sigh, stretched out an arm, and slapped Lin Sun. Boom! The arm was like a heavenly pillar in the void. When the big hand slapped down, the sun, the moon, and the stars all seemed insignificant. Looking from a distance, it was like the hand of God coming to the world. Lin Sun didn't stop. A bright saber light condensed in the void, and suddenly turned into a long 1,500 meters long, slashing out against the sky. My heart, like a saber, can cut the sun, the moon, the ghosts, and the gods. In a flash, the big hand was cut down by the saber light, turning into an illusory rain of light and dissipating. If you kill me, all living beings will die because of you, the loud voice roared, shaking the heavens and deafening the deaf. Lin Sun raised his head, and the sarcasm on his face became more and more intense. When the false is true, the true is false. If you don't come back to life, how can you fight with me? Buzz. With a move of his mind, he rushed up to the sky. This was an illusory world created by the will of all living beings, so he should fight against it with his own will. And the will of the great way that Lin Sun set up even triggered a strange and terrible catastrophe. Then, in this dark world, there was a sudden burst of light, and Lin Sun's figure had an incredible change in this light. When my Tao is proved, eternity is my crown, crowning my head. Immortality is my clothes, cover my body. Fortune is my boots, stepping on my feet. My heart is the heart of heaven. My Tao is the great way. The great wish that he had said in the past was like a brand integrated into his life. At this moment, it turned into a substantial power, appearing from Lin Sun. The world was bright, and the darkness seemed to be dispelled. Lin Sun's figure turned into the most dazzling light. He stood towering above the heavens, his figure mighty and imposing. The sun, moon, and stars surrounded him. Tens of thousands of Daos descended, and a myriad of immortal divine radiance coiled around him. Everyone was shocked and stopped what they were doing. Extremely far away, the Ksitigarbha imperial monarch that resided loftily in the heavens seemed as if he'd seen a ghost, and he cried out involuntarily. What sort of grand Taoish energy is this? How? However, Lin Sun didn't pay any attention to him at all. He looked down at all the living beings and said, "We creatures don't kneel to the sky, nor do we kneel to the ground. We don't fear demons or deities. If our heads are cut off, we will die. If our knees are broken, we will never be able to stand up again." Every single word he spoke was like the sonorous tune of the Grand Tao that resounded through the universe, and it caused the figures of all living beings to tremble. Especially those cultivators, struggle and dazed expressions appeared in their eyes. Ksitigarbha sensed that something was amiss and shouted, "I have protected all of you until now. My will is the will of the heavens. If you dare to betray me, you will be abandoned by the world and sink into oblivion for all eternity." His voice shook the heavens, causing the bodies of billions of living beings to tremble. Lin Sun said indifferently, "Most of them have converted to the Ksitigarbha gate, but not willingly. As long as they resist it, the Grand Tao wish energy of all living beings will collapse on its own. Then, how can you, Ksitigarbha Imperial Monarch, control all living beings? Talk about the eternity? Rebirth for nirvana?" As he spoke, Lin Sun stretched out his body and raised his hand. The light of the Grand Tao shot through the heavens and enveloped all living beings. "I, Lin Dao Yuan, am here to give you a chance to make a decision. If you don't want to convert to the Ksitigarbha gate, enter this bottle now." The Grand Tao wish energy rumbled. It condensed into the shape of the infinity bottle and floated in the heavens. "Who dares?" Ksitigarbha Imperial Monarch was completely enraged. However, the figures of countless cultivators flashed out from amidst the myriad of living beings, and they didn't hesitate to charge into the infinite bottle. With someone taking the lead, the others followed one after another. For a moment, the billions of living beings swarmed towards the infinity bottle like a great river. "I'll kill you all!" The Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva roared as he brandished his 3 heads and 6 arms, forming seals, punching out, and slapping out with his palms. "Lin Dao Yuan, you're the one who forced this. They're dying because of you." Lin Sun waved his hand. Boom! Endless light surged and turned into the shape of a sword cauldron. In the blink of an eye, it chopped off the 6 arms of Ksitigarbha Imperial Monarch. Following that, Ksitigarbha Imperial Monarch's figure showed signs of collapsing. Lin Sun watched quietly. As she said, the Grand Tao wish energy of all living beings was an evil path. Success or failure was shackled by this power. As the Grand Tao wish energy of all living beings flowed into the infinity bottle, Ksitigarbha Imperial Monarch was destined to die, let alone come back to life from nirvana. Lin, Dao, Yuan, Xidigarba, imperial monarch's towering figure that held up the heavens, finally disappeared. On the verge of death, he let out a roar filled with hatred and unwillingness. Like a curse from ancient times, every word was filled with monstrous hatred. Lin Sun's heart remained calm from beginning to end. Boom! The dark world in front of him also collapsed and was annihilated. Lin Sun's vision changed. His mind and consciousness returned to his body, and he still saw the hidden land realm. However, the towering black Buddhist shrines began to crack and collapse at this moment. The faceless Buddhist statue that was enshrined in the black Buddhist shrines also cracked like a spider's web. Accompanied by bursts of rumbling sounds, it collapsed on the ground. Smoke and dust filled the air. The grand Tao wish energy of all living beings surged between heaven and earth like a tide. It was the faith of billions of living beings accumulated by the hidden land realm for countless years. However, with the collapse and death of Xidigarba, imperial monarch statue, the enormous grand Tao wish energy of all living beings had become ownerless. Buzz. Lin Sun took out the sword cauldron. Suddenly, the grand Tao wish energy of all living beings poured into it like a tide. When I destroy the hidden land realm, I will set you free. Lin Sun's eyes were clear. For any cultivator in the world, this grand Tao wish energy of all living beings was definitely a treasure that they dreamed of. It was enough to make martial emperors drool. However, Lin Sun had never intended to use the grand Tao wish energy of all living beings to cultivate. Naturally, he did not care too much about it. When Lin Sun put away the sword cauldron, a terrifying roar suddenly rang out. He turned around suddenly. Far away, she pierced through the huge body of the hidden hibernation divine beast, which looked like one of the 9 odd beasts, and exploded. On the other hand, Shi's figure was sent flying. His figure staggered and shook violently in the void. It seemed like he was going to fall. Lin Sun's heart tightened. He immediately moved horizontally and reached out to grab Shi's slender waist, holding her in his arms. Shi's delicate body suddenly tensed up. She instinctively waved her hand to hit him. However, when she saw that it was Lin Sun, her fair hand stopped an inch away from Lin Sun's face. Let go. She was embarrassed and annoyed, which was rare. In the past, she was as cold as snow, graceful and ethereal like a fairy from heaven. She was surrounded by a dreamy rain of light, making it impossible for people to see her face clearly. Even so, she was still so beautiful that no one would have any thoughts of blasphemy. But now, she was actually embarrassed and annoyed, which was rare. This was the first time Lin Sun had seen this since he was young. He could not help but be stunned. However, he could not care less about this. He said, "Senior, don't move. Your injuries are quite serious this time." Shi's chest was stained with blood, and there was a bloody claw wound on her shoulder. The wound was so deep that the bone could be seen. Strangely, there were wisps of forbidden power growing near the wound. They were constantly eroding Shi's snow-white skin that was as delicate as white jade. This was just a superficial wound. Lin Sun noticed that Shi's aura was showing signs of disorder. It was obvious that she had suffered extremely serious internal injuries. This made Lin Sun narrow his eyes. Only then did he realize that the power of the hidden land beast was far more terrifying than he had imagined. When Lin Sun's gaze focused on his injuries, she felt very uncomfortable, as though there were ants crawling all over his body. This was the first time in her life that a man had hugged her like this. Even though Lin Sun was concerned about her injuries, she was unable to adapt to this strange feeling. She was just about to struggle when Lin Sun carried her and landed on the ground. He said seriously, "Senior, let me help you treat your wounds first." She was just about to refuse when she heard a ripping sound. Lin Sun had already torn apart the lapel at her shoulder, and a lustrous and soft shoulder that was like beautiful jade was revealed. Her exquisite collarbone was graceful, and it made the bloody claw wound on her shoulder seem even more eye-catching. She felt ashamed and furious. If not for her injuries being too severe and her strength being exhausted, she would have wanted to hang this little fellow whom she had watched grow up and give him a beating. However, when she saw Lin Sun's serious and even nervous expression, she could not bear to do so. She thought to herself, he's just concerned about my injuries and has no intention of offending me. It's pardonable. Just as she's emotions were drifting, Lin Sun had already started to clean her wounds gently and carefully. Senior, you can only rely on yourself to resolve the damage caused by the taboo order energy. As he spoke, Lin Sun began to bandage her wounds. She gave a muffled grunt. However, the next moment, her starry eyes suddenly widened as she shouted, "Stop!" However, Lin Sun looked like he was going to clean the bloodstained clothes on her chest. This made She's entire body tense up as if her hair was standing on end. Lin Sun was startled and withdrew his hands in embarrassment. He quickly explained, "I almost forgot. Senior, you..." Before Lin Sun could finish, she gritted her teeth and spat out 2 words, "Get out of the way." Lin Sun smiled bitterly. He had been too concerned earlier and did not notice the difference between men and women. He had no intention of taking advantage of her. However, it was clear that she had misunderstood and seemed very angry. Lin Sun wisely turned around and walked into the distance. "Senior, please treat your wounds first. I'll go and check out the battlefield. After all, this is the hidden land realm." As he spoke, he walked further and further away. After watching Lin Sun disappear from her sight, she snorted coldly and retracted her gaze. This kid, did he not take my warning to heart? P.S. Unexpected situation. Today's update, tomorrow's update. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 24:10. A day later. The news of the destruction of the Hidden Land realm caused a huge commotion once again. The entire dark world trembled because of it. First, they destroyed the divine, miracle ancient sect, then the Hidden Land realm. The 2 dark giants had dominated the dark world for countless years, but now, in less than a month, they had collapsed and disappeared from the world. This was undoubtedly unbelievable. The dark world structure since ancient times had been completely overturned today. Shock, fear, reverence, fear, trance. All sorts of emotions erupted like a torrent, filling every corner of the dark world. This was indeed no different from a change in the world. The title of Dao Yuan Emperor was like a legend that cut through the darkness and overturned the structure of a world. It was deeply imprinted in the hearts of countless living beings. Since ancient times, there have been many great emperors, but only Dao Yuan Emperor became an emperor at the peak. He crushed the 2 dark giants and experienced the power of the dark world. From today onwards, the Dao Yuan Emperor will reign supreme in the dark world. Even after thousands of years, the name of the Dao Yuan Emperor will be remembered for eternity and will shake the world for generations to come. All kinds of exclamations and shocked voices reverberated in the dark world. In such an atmosphere, in the territory originally controlled by the Hidden Land realm, countless cities and Ksitigarbha temples were eradicated one by one. Coupled with the territory controlled by the divine miracle ancient sect that had been overturned earlier, the structure of the entire dark world had changed. However, what puzzled countless people was that under such a situation, the Copper Sparrow Tower did not take the opportunity to expand its territory. On the contrary, whether it was the divine miracle ancient sect or the forces and territories left behind by the Hidden Land realm, they had all fallen into a state of turmoil. This seemed very abnormal. However, some experienced people could still see through the mystery at a glance. Shi Tiandi and the Copper Sparrow Tower Master, who had disappeared from the Kunlun ruins, were still unknown. Under such circumstances, the Copper Sparrow Tower had to continue lying low. Otherwise, if Shi Tiandi returned to the Starry Sky ancient path and found out about the destruction of the Hidden Land realm and the divine miracle ancient sect, the Copper Sparrow Tower would definitely suffer a great calamity. However, even though the Copper Sparrow Tower did not expand and occupy the territory that originally belonged to the Hidden Land realm and the divine miracle ancient sect. However, in the current dark world, no one dared to touch these territories. With the Dao Yuan the Arch around, who in the dark world would dare to touch the spoils of war that originally belonged to the Dao Yuan the Arch? If they dared to do so, they would definitely be courting death. 10 days later, Hidden Land Realm. Lin Sun, Shi, Goldie, Qing Ying, and a group of Bronze Sparrow Tower elders gathered together. Pavilion Master, after these 2 battles, you've already fully deserving of being the #1 overlord of the darkness. Under your control, my Copper Sparrow Pavilion will definitely welcome an unprecedented golden age. An old man said excitedly. Yes, in today's dark world, the Hidden Land Realm and the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect have all been uprooted. There's no possibility for them to rise again. In the future, our Bronze Sparrow Tower will be the leader of the dark world, and the Tower Master will follow your lead. The other old men of the Bronze Sparrow Pavilion spoke as well. Their expressions were more or less filled with shock and emotion. Even they didn't expect that in just 1 month, Lin Sun not only changed the difficult and dangerous situation of the Bronze Sparrow Tower, but also swept across the dark world and suppressed the 2 dark giants. This was simply a miracle. Lin Sun swept his gaze across everyone and said, although the Hidden Land Realm and the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect have been destroyed, Heavenly Emperor Sure is still there. Everyone, don't celebrate too early. Everyone was stunned, and the atmosphere became much quieter. Lin Sun continued, however, there's no need to worry. I'll head to the Kunlun ruins very soon to investigate the specific situation. After I leave, I'll have to leave the matters of the Bronze Sparrow Tower to you. As he spoke, he looked at Qing Ying. Don't worry, young master. The current dark world no longer has any power that can threaten our Bronze Sparrow Tower, Qing Ying said seriously with a gentle and clear voice. However, she could not help but feel a trace of disappointment in her heart. Young master had only returned for less than a month, and he was about to embark on a journey again. She wondered when he would return from the Kunlun ruins. Lin Sun, on the other hand, was calculating. This time, destroying the Hidden Land Realm had also obtained a tremendous amount of wealth that had been accumulated for countless years. It was even more than the wealth he had obtained from the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect. Lin Sun kept some that were beneficial to his future cultivation, and the rest were left to the Bronze Sparrow Tower to take care of. In fact, to the current Lin Sun, unless it was an extremely rare treasure of heaven and earth, it was difficult for ordinary treasures to enter his eyes. Perhaps in the eyes of other Emperor stage figures, some treasures were priceless and were enough to make them go crazy, but to him, they were nothing. The only thing that made Lin Sun feel a little guilty was that ever since he helped Shi heal his injuries that day, the latter had a cold look on his face as if he was really angry. However, Lin Sun could not help but feel a little depressed. At that time, he really wanted to help Shi heal his injuries. In fact, Shi's injuries were indeed very serious this time. His body had been infected by a taboo order energy, and it had yet to be expelled. This made Lin Sun a little depressed, but also a little worried. As for Goldie, not being able to participate in the action of suppressing and destroying the Hidden Land Realm made it full of complaints. The resentment in its eyes made Lin Sun feel frightened. 2 days later, Lin Sun and Goldie left the dark world without the outside world noticing. Swoosh! The vast universe arc shuttled through the vast starry sky. Lin Sun sat casually at the bow of the ark, holding a wine gourd as he pondered. The location of the Kunlun ruins was very easy to find. This was not a secret on the ancient path in the starry sky. There were records about the entrance of the Kunlun ruins in the Bronze Sparrow Tower. However, it was very difficult to enter the Kunlun ruins. In the past, every once in a while, the phenomenon of the flying celestial river would appear near the entrance of the Kunlun ruins. One could enter along the flying celestial river. However, without the flying celestial river, it was almost impossible for even an Emperor stage cultivator to enter. The reason was that the entrance of the Kunlun ruins was covered in an extremely special order energy. It was the origin energy that belonged to the Kunlun ruins. My sword cauldron has refined the 9 Emperor weapons of Kunlun in an origin relic of the treasure refining Mother Cauldron. Perhaps I could try to communicate with the order energy of the Kunlun ruins. If it really doesn't work, I'll use the power of the Order Phoenix flames to forcefully barge in. While Lin Sun was deep in thought, Big Yellow's voice suddenly sounded. Look, that's the abandoned planet region. A long time ago, probably in the primordial times, all the great emperors who entered the starry sky ancient path from the ancient desolation region would choose to enter the abandoned planet region. Big Yellow pointed into the distance. The starry sky was vast. In a vast void in the distance, a star region appeared. From afar, it gave off a chaotic, collapsed, and desolate aura. You should have heard of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance, right? It was established by a group of the most dazzling Emperor Stage cultivators. A long time ago, the emperors of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance occupied the abandoned planet region. When Big Yellow said that, Lin Sun suddenly came to a realization. Ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance. Wasn't that the Battle Alliance created by the Golden Cicada Young Man, Chen Linkong, Taishian Sword Emperor, and Battle Emperor Wu Yong? Back then, in the mulberry forest of the slaughtering battlefield, the Golden Cicada Young Man had brought Zhao Yuanji and his wife, the blood-colored moth Fei Lan, and a group of terrifying creatures to the ancient path of the starry sky for the sake of going to the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance. Later, as Lin Sun experienced more and more things, he gradually learned some secrets about the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance. A long time ago, after the emperors of the ancient Desolation Realm entered the ancient path of the starry sky, they established the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance in order to resist other forces in the starry sky. In the Archean era, the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance shone brilliantly. There was Tai Xian, known as the #1 sword emperor in the Archean era, Xing Jia Buddha Lord, whose dharma shook the heavens, and Battle Emperor Wu Yong, who traveled the world with the way of slaughter. Later, Tai Xian and the other first-generation cultivators of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance crossed the starry sky and went to the other side, leaving behind many legends about them. When the 10 great Dao battles broke out, the Nameless Emperor covered the sky with the forbidden power of order and arrived at the ancient Desolation Realm. In order to defend the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass, the cultivators of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance fought to the death. For example, the ancestor of the Children of Hell, the Dark-Blood Underworld Emperor, shone in the defense of the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass and became famous overnight. However, as the 10 great Dao battles ended and the heavens entered the Archean era, the cultivators of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance could only hide in the abandoned planet region. The reason was that the Nameless Emperor was the ruler of the starry sky and controlled the power of order. He saw the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance as a great threat and wanted to eliminate it. The abandoned planet region was one of the few special areas in the starry sky that couldn't be covered by the forbidden power of order. When he met Zhao Yuanji and his wife in the True Dragon world, they told Lin Sun that after the Nameless Emperor was killed a few years ago, some cultivators of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance who had been hiding in the abandoned planet region also took the opportunity to cross the void and go to the other side of the starry sky. However, some of the emperors didn't leave and were still in the abandoned planet region. At that time, Zhao Yuanji especially reminded Lin Sun that the Golden Crow, the emperor of the Golden Crow clan, hated Lin Sun's guts and would take revenge sooner or later. So Lin Sun had to be careful. Big Yellow, do you know the Golden Crow, the emperor? Lin Sun suddenly asked. Big Yellow was dazed and said, You mean the old Golden Crow? Although I haven't seen him before, I've heard some rumors about him. The Golden Crow, the emperor, was a founding member of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance. He was a cold-blooded and ruthless, peerless hero who had killed countless people. He had already become an emperor in the Archean era. When the cultivation war of the emperors broke out in the Archean era, the Golden Crow, the emperor, showed his power of the 8th level of the Emperor realm. According to Big Yellow, if the old Golden Crow was still alive, it was very likely that he had already touched the mystery of the Emperor Ancestor realm. As for whether he had entered the Ancestor realm, it was hard to say. After understanding this, Lin Sun's black eyes flashed, and he made a decision. He said, Let's go to the abandoned planet region. I'd like to see how powerful the old Golden Crow is now. Chapter 2411. Abandoned Star Region. Lin Sun put away the vast universe arc and walked across Zhou Su with Big Yellow towards this barren and dilapidated star region. Not long after they left, an old voice sounded, "Taoism Pier, please stop here. This is where the ancient Wasteland War Alliance is located. Non-cultivators of the ancient Wasteland territory are not allowed to enter." Lin Sun spread out his divine awareness and immediately saw a gray-robed man sitting on the top of the mountain on a distant star. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were cold. "I'm from the ancient Wasteland territory," Lin Sun said casually. Boom! A terrifying consciousness rushed out of the gray-robed man like a tide, rising into the starry sky and shrouding Lin Sun. But before it could get close, it was silently dissolved by the aura around Lin Sun. The gray-robed man's pupils shrank as he realized the danger. He got up from the top of the mountain and said solemnly, "I hope you can forgive me for my offense just now. But where do you come from, and what are you doing here?" Lin Sun said, "My name is Lin Daoyuan, and I'm looking for the Golden Crow Emperor." "Daoyuan Emperor?" The gray-robed man was dumbfounded and gasped. Only now did he realize who Lin Sun was. A few years ago, the Nirvana heaven came to an end, and Lin Daoyuan became the first person to become an emperor in 100,000 years. Who didn't know such a legendary figure on the starry ancient path? Immediately, the gray-robed man showed a strange expression. "Taoism Pier, are you looking for the Golden Crow Emperor?" Lin Sun nodded. The gray-robed man was stunned for a moment, and then he laughed. "You may not know this, but shortly after the nameless Supreme Emperor was defeated, the Golden Crow Emperor was suppressed. Now no one can see him." Lin Sun was not surprised. Zhao Yuanji and his wife had already told him that when the Golden Cicada young man and Chen Linkong went to the other side of the starry sky, the Golden Cicada young man had personally suppressed the Golden Crow Emperor, who had just come out of seclusion for 100 years. Lin Sun asked, "I just want to know where he is suppressed now. I hope you can tell me." The gray-robed man hesitated for a moment, then said, "When our ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance was first established, there was an unwritten rule. No matter who comes to seek revenge, they will be regarded as the enemy of our ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance. Fellow, everyone in the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance knows about the personal grudge between you and the Golden Crow monster. I can't help you with this matter. Furthermore, if you were to force your way through, be it me or the others hiding in this star domain, we would all do our best to stop you. I respect the rules of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance, but if I don't see that old monster Golden Crow this time, wouldn't I have wasted my trip? I hope you can make an exception." Lin Sun cupped his hands. The gray-robed man smiled bitterly. "Daoyuan Emperor, you are making things difficult for us. Forgive me for not being able to agree. Then we can only force our way through." Big Yellow said loudly, "In any case, as long as we don't kill people, we won't offend the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance. I just don't know if the experts who are still here can stop them." The gray-robed man's expression changed drastically. At this moment, an ethereal and calm voice sounded from the depths of the abandoned star domain. "I have long heard of your name, Daoyuan Emperor. If I can fight with you one by one today, even if I lose, it will be a wonderful thing. However, I have to remind you that since ancient times, even a nameless Supreme Emperor has not been able to break through this place. If you think you're completely confident, you can give it a try." With that, the voice disappeared with air. "Who is this person?" Lin Sun asked. "The current leader of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance, Ancestor Li Tsong." There was a hint of awe in the gray-robed man's voice. Lin Sun nodded and said, "In that case, I'll do as you say." The gray-robed man was stunned. "Do you really want to break through?" Lin Sun smiled and walked forward. Big Yellow followed him step by step. "Daoyuan Emperor, don't blame me for being ruthless," the gray-robed man said. With a clang, a dazzling golden halberd swept out from behind him. Up, holding the golden halberd, he tore the sky apart and rushed into Zhou Su. It was fierce and wild, like a golden thunderbolt, whistling through the starry sky. "Step back." Lin Sun flicked his fingers casually. In the deafening roar, golden lights splashed and the wind and clouds were disturbed. As for the gray-robed man, he left just as quickly as he had arrived. He was directly blasted away and fell heavily onto the mountain peak where he had been standing just a moment ago. Bang! When he stood still, the mountain collapsed and smoke and dust filled the air. It could be imagined how powerful Lin Sun's flick was. The gray-robed man's expression was uncertain. After a while, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. No wonder you are the first peerless emperor in 100,000 years. When he looked up again, Lin Sun's figure had already crossed the starry sky and disappeared in the depths. The ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance is not so easy to break through. Dao Yuan Emperor, I like to see if you can get what you want. The gray-robed man murmured. The abandoned star region was very large, including countless stars, and there were many worlds and floating continents. However, no matter where, there was a bleak, dilapidated, and desolate scene. Not long after Lin Sun moved forward, rays of divine light, like flowing light, swept over from a floating continent in the distance. In the end, it turned into a tall, middle-aged man with an ancient sword on his back. His temples were gray and his eyes were full of vicissitudes. Gu Ditong, 6th level Emperor Realm, Sword Cultivator. Please enlighten me, Dao Yuan Emperor. The middle-aged man with a sword looked resolute and his eyes were sharp. He was calm and composed. Lin Sun noticed that such a sword emperor called himself a sword cultivator. This was not a humble title, but a kind of dedicated attitude towards sword cultivation. Please. Lin Sun raised his hand and made a gesture of invitation. Clang! The ancient sword on Gu Ditong's back was unsheathed, and the sound of the sword resounded through Zhou Su. The unparalleled sword edge turned with his wrist and chopped down. The silent void was like a piece of paper that had been torn apart, forming a straight crack. Around the crack was a violent, destructive torrent. The power of the sword showed the demeanor of a great emperor. There was a burst of exclamation in the dark. In the face of this sword, Lin Sun pulled out the void with his right hand, as if drawing a sword. A 9-inch sword edge suddenly appeared in the void. At this moment, the dark void seemed to be illuminated, and the light chilled the starry sky. When the sword light dissipated, Gu Ditong let out a muffled groan and staggered back a few steps. His eyes couldn't help but shrink, the sword-drawing art of sky-slaying swordsman. Lin Sun cupped his hands. Thank you. Gu Ditong had a complicated look in his eyes. He suddenly shouted, Dao Yuan Emperor's attainments in sword cultivation are unprecedented. You old guys should think twice, or you'll be humiliated. Clang! He sheathed his sword and turned to leave. Lin Sun smiled and continued to move forward. Along the way, he put his hands behind his back, as if he was taking a stroll in a courtyard, watching the flowers and admiring the rain, calm and composed. Let me do it. I can't weaken the power of our ancient Wasteland War Alliance. A soft sigh sounded. In a distant world, a majestic figure wrapped in dazzling divine light stepped on the void and rushed over. With every step he took, the starry sky trembled. Tens of thousands of stars rustled and rippled like the void. The power of this figure rose steadily with each step he took. Looking closely, it was actually a woman. She was wearing a scarlet armor, and her long black hair was tied into a ponytail, revealing a beautiful face. She held a long rod in her hand that was shining with silver light. Her cold body revealed a terrifying, domineering aura. She was like a valkyrie galloping through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. It's been 80,000 years. I finally see the Star Martial Emperor fight again. She is still so powerful, so domineering, and so beautiful. The Star Martial Emperor is at the peak of the 8th level of the Emperor realm. She has been fighting all her life and is decisive in killing. Although she is not a man, she is better than a man. This Dao Yuan Emperor is only at the 4th level of the Emperor realm. I'm afraid he is going to be in trouble. There was a burst of whispers in the dark. At this moment, the woman called the Star Martial Emperor had already rushed to this starry sky. Her power covered the sky and the earth, oppressing the nearby stars to wail and explode. It was extremely terrifying. Take out your Emperor weapon. The Star Martial Emperor spoke. His eyes were like thunder and lightning, tearing the sky and locking on Lin Sun. It's enough to fight barehanded, Lin Sun said indifferently. Such a reaction stunned the old monsters who were secretly watching this battle. They seemed to be unable to believe that this boy was so arrogant. They didn't know Lin Sun's achievements in the dark world. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a big reaction. I won't show mercy. The Star Martial Emperor waved the long rod in his hand. Boom! The endless light turned into a tidal torrent that overturned the void. It was fierce, domineering, and extremely fierce. It seemed that the strike of the rod would smash the starry sky. Seeing this, Lin Sun stretched his body and punched forward. Every move he made was filled with the light of the Tao, showing a kind of ancient, boundless, simple, and pure charm. Boom! The fist and the rod collided, stirring up thousands of torrents of light. The killing momentum of the Star Martial Emperor was forcibly blocked. The old monsters in the dark changed their expressions. They restrained their contempt and focused on the battle. For them, it was also the first time they saw the demeanor of Zhu Yin the Great. But no one had thought that Lin Sun, a fourth-level Zhu Yin the Great, could be so strong. Kill. The Star Martial Emperor also realized that Lin Sun was not simple. He rushed forward and swung his long rod, rolling up thousands of torrents of the Great Way and displaying all kinds of destructive visions. It was unimaginably powerful. At least in Lin Sun's view, Yu Kuan-zi, the headmaster of the divine Sunshine Ancient Sect, was slightly inferior to the Star Martial Emperor. Unfortunately, all this could not threaten Lin Sun at all. As the battle broke out, the two had exchanged hundreds of blows in a flash. All the attacks of the Star Martial Emperor were easily resolved by Lin Sun. From beginning to end, he could not hurt the Star Martial Emperor at all. This made the old monsters in the dark tremble again. Was this the power of the Zhu Yin the Great? Wasn't it too heaven-defying? Just when everyone's mind was in turmoil, the Star Martial Emperor suddenly retreated, her beautiful and cold face changing. In the end, she sighed, "I'm not as good as you. I will lose if we fight again. Thank you." She put away the long rod and cupped her hands to Lin Sun. How could she not understand that if Lin Sun used the Emperor weapon, she would have been defeated long ago? The reason why she could fight until now must be that the Star Martial Emperor had been patient. P.S. Send 2 consecutive chapters first, and there will be more at night. Chapter 24:12. Lin Sun cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for letting me win." Star Martial Emperor had a complicated look in his eyes. He looked at Lin Sun for a while and said, "The ancient Desolation region is fortunate to have you, Lin Daoyuan." After saying that, she turned around and left. Her scarlet armor was extremely eye-catching. Lin Sun continued to move forward. From the beginning to the end, Big Yellow followed Lin Sun like a spectator. The old monsters were silent in the dark, but they couldn't calm down. The power that belonged to Zhu Yun the Great had completely overturned their understanding of the power of emperors. Especially after Star Martial Emperor admitted defeat, they all realized that stopping such a young man in the abandoned planet region would be very difficult. Some old monsters admitted that they were inferior to Star Martial Emperor, so they gave up on the idea of fighting. It was no different from asking to be humiliated. Some old monsters suggested attacking together, but they were strongly opposed. Although Lin Sun had never joined the Ancient Desolation Battle Alliance, he was from the Ancient Desolation region after all. Besides, they all knew that the feud between Golden Crow the Great and Lin Sun could only be considered a personal grudge. If they weren't from the same camp, they wouldn't even bother to get involved. 15 minutes later, Lin Sun arrived at the deepest part of the abandoned planet region. It was a barren and chaotic starry sky. Countless meteorites turned into turbulent flows and tumbled like raging waves. Space-time bands splashed out of the terrifying void faults, flashing with a terrifying luster that could make even the Emperor ancestors shudder. And in the depths of this group of asteroids, there were 3 broken and withered world planes. One was burning with towering golden flames, like a kingdom of lava. The other was quiet and cold. Everything had withered, and it gave off an oppressive aura. It was like a world that had turned into ruins. The last one was a world that was bound by countless black chains. The layers of chains flickered with destructive fluctuations of loss. The golden crow old monster is suppressed in that world of lava. If you want to see him, you have to go through me first. The ethereal and calm voice rang out. In that silent and desolate world, a figure rose from the dust on the ground. His hair and beard were messy, but he looked like a normal young man. There was no fluctuation of aura around him. But when he saw this person, Big Yellow's pupils suddenly shrank. He showed a solemn expression and reminded Lin's son, "I'm afraid this guy is the Emperor Ancestor Song. His aura has reached the peak of the Ancestor realm." Lin's son narrowed his eyes and remained calm. After getting up, the figure patted the dust off his body and gently stepped on the void. Suddenly, he came to the starry sky. It gave others the feeling that he wasn't teleporting, but that world was carrying him forward. It was extremely inconceivable. This young man was naturally Emperor Song, and also the current leader of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance. His eyes were indifferent, and there was no fluctuation of aura around him. He was like a mortal in the secular world. But in the eyes of Lin, Sun, and Goldie, Emperor Song was like the ruler of this starry sky. His aura and his strength had long since fused into every inch of this starry sky. Back then, before Golden Cicada left, he suppressed old monster Golden Crow here with a palm strike, making it impossible for him to escape for 100 years. Now, the 100 years are not over. The Emperor Ancestor Song said, "In my opinion, you might as well settle this personal grudge with the Golden Crow old monster when he gets out." Lin Sun thought for a while and said, "Time doesn't wait for me." He was really busy. If he did not encounter the abandoned planet region on his way to the Kunlun ruins, he would not have taken the initiative to look for the Golden Crow old monster. "How long have you been cultivating? How dare you say time doesn't wait for me?" The Emperor Ancestor Song laughed and said, "Moreover, as far as I know, if you didn't cut down the Fusang Divine Tree of the Golden Crow clan, how could the Golden Crow old monster see you as a thorn in his side? Young man, don't be too aggressive." Lin Sun frowned. "The grudge between me and that old guy is not because of the Fusang Divine Tree. You don't understand the situation, so don't jump to conclusions." The old monsters who were secretly watching this scene all gasped. They did not expect that, even in the face of the Emperor Ancestor Song, Lin Daoyuan dared to be so domineering. However, the smile on the Emperor Ancestor Song's lips disappeared. He glanced at Lin's son, then looked at Big Yellow and said, "Battle Emperor Shao, are you here to support this guy?" Big Yellow grinned. "I'm not supporting him, but I think it's better for outsiders like you and me not to get involved in other people's personal grudges, lest we get into trouble." The Emperor Ancestor Song nodded and looked at Lin's son again. "No matter who it is, the rules of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance cannot be changed. Young man, you have a boundless future. If you're obsessed with hatred, it will be detrimental to your cultivation. I don't want to make things difficult for you, and I hope you won't make things difficult for me." His words weren't overbearing, but the tone of superiority and the posture of teaching a junior was unmistakable. This also made Lin Sun a little impatient in his heart. He said indifferently, "If I really intend to be the enemy of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance, why do I need to be modest and reserved all the way? Fellow practitioner, I also hope that you'd better not pressure me with any great reason." The word fellow practitioner was emphasized by Lin's son. The Emperor Ancestor Song couldn't help laughing. "You call me fellow practitioner? On the other hand, how could a young man like you be worthy of being my peer?" However, Lin's son was not annoyed at all. Instead, he thought about it seriously and said, "This title is indeed a little inappropriate. Strictly speaking, you have never set foot in the Jewessian Emperor realm, so you are naturally not the same person as me. You can take back your previous remarks. After all, how can anyone casually comment on my great way?" Big Yellow couldn't help laughing at these words. Jewessian Emperor realm. This was completely reasonable and well-founded. It was an invisible slap in the face. Who didn't know that Lin Sun was the first person to become an emperor in 100,000 years. Who in this world was qualified to comment on his great way? The face of the Emperor Ancestor Li Tsong was slightly gloomy. It was obvious that these words also stimulated his heart, but he couldn't refute it at all. Jiuxian. It was just 2 words, but how could anyone understand the weight of the meaning behind it? He stared at Lin Sun for a moment and said, "It's futile to argue. Then let's fight." Lin Sun said without thinking. In the true dragon world, he had killed the Emperor Ancestor. The Emperor Ancestor Li Tsong let out a long sigh and seemed to be a little sad. "Well, I'll take action today to wake you up, Emperor Dao Yuan, so that you won't think that you can ignore the people in the world when you become a great emperor." Boom! He stretched out his hand and grasped. The stars in the sky trembled, and the brilliant light of Tao surged up like a landslide and a tsunami, turning into a 5-finger cage, covering Lin Sun. It gave people a feeling that the starry sky was under his control. No matter who was in the starry sky, he would be suppressed and imprisoned. But Lin Sun smiled. It should have been like this long ago. "Don't talk nonsense, Big Yellow." "Kill him." Big Yellow, who had been ready for a long time, roared and rushed over. "Even with you, Battle Emperor Shao, it's futile." The Emperor Ancestor Li Tsong smiled indifferently. With a turn of his mind, the 5-finger cage spread out hundreds of millions of rays of light, seeming to want to suppress Lin Sun and Big Yellow together. Boom! Big Yellow stretched out his paw and waved it fiercely, breaking the 5-finger cage, and continued to rush forward, looking extremely fierce. "If your master is here, maybe I'll be a little afraid, but with just you and this boy, it's like a mantis try to stop a chariot." The Emperor Ancestor Li Tsong smiled lightly, his sleeves fluttered, and his 5 fingers suddenly stretched out. But at this moment, a vast expanse of white divine light was released from Lin Sun, so dazzling that the Emperor Ancestor Li Tsong couldn't open his eyes. And at this moment, Big Yellow's paw slapped down fiercely. Bang! A muffled sound. The Emperor Ancestor Li Tsong staggered and fell to the ground. His head was in a daze, and he saw stars. What's going on? In an instant, it was like the sky was turned upside down, and even a powerful existence like him, who was at the perfection Emperor Ancestor realm, was caught off guard. The Emperor Ancestor Li Tsong was just about to get up, but his back was pressed by Big Yellow's paw, and his neck was clamped by Big Yellow's paw, as if it was catching an old rabbit. Big Yellow shouted arrogantly, "Old thing, keep pretending, keep pretending." The Emperor Ancestor Li Tsong was so ashamed and angry that he almost coughed up blood. In an instant, he was actually suppressed by a dog. This was definitely the biggest shame he had encountered since he started cultivating. And in the dark, all the old monsters who were watching this scene were all dumbfounded. They couldn't imagine that the Emperor Ancestor Li Tsong was suppressed just as the battle broke out. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have suspected that it was a dream. "I didn't expect that you, the dignified Battle Emperor Shao, would also do a sneak attack." The Emperor Ancestor Li Tsong gritted his teeth, and his eyes flashed with terrifying light. Bang! Big Yellow raised his paw and slapped the back of the Emperor Ancestor Li Tsong's head. "As the Emperor Ancestor, you bullied a young man at the 4th level of the Emperor realm. Don't you feel ashamed? Puffed. Shameless old thing." The Emperor Ancestor Li Tsong's eyes turned red, and he was about to go crazy. He shouted, "Battle Emperor Shao, do you really want to become enemies with the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance?" Before, he was calm and composed, high and mighty, like a dominator. Whether it was facing Big Yellow or Lin Sun, he had the attitude of a senior who was giving instructions to the world. But now his hair was disheveled, and he was suppressed in the void. His body was being stepped on by Big Yellow, and he looked extremely embarrassed. "Stop bullshitting. You old man, you are very bad. You can't defeat me, so you start to threaten me with the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance. Don't you feel ashamed?" Big Yellow scolded. "You?" The Emperor Ancestor Li Tsong was so angry that he couldn't even speak. "Big Yellow, let him go." At this moment, Lin Sun spoke. "Let him go?" Big Yellow hesitated. What if this old thing he has already lost? Plus, We are indeed not here to become enemies with the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to talk so much nonsense. We could just kill him, Lin Sun said casually. Big Yellow nodded, turned around, and left. The old monsters who were watching all this secretly also let out a long sigh of relief. If Lin Sun really fell out with the Emperor Ancestor Li Song, as a member of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance, they were destined to not stand by and watch. However, would the Emperor Ancestor Li Song be willing to suffer such a great humiliation? All eyes looked over at the same time. P.S. Update sent. Chapter 24:13. Climbing up, Emperor Li Song stared at Lin Sun and Big Yellow with a livid face. His chest heaved up and down, and his breath was like a volcano that was ready to erupt. After a long time, he exhaled a long breath of turbid air. The momentum that was about to erupt dissipated, and he regained his tranquil charm. This made those old monsters in the dark completely relaxed. Emperor Li Song didn't lose control of himself because of the great humiliation. That is the very best. If I wanted to keep you two here, I would have already used its power. Emperor Li Song pointed to the world that was bound by countless black chains in the distance. But in the final analysis, you are not the enemy of ancient Wasteland War Alliance. This time, I admit defeat. Lin Sun and Big Yellow looked at each other and cupped their hands. Thank you for your help. Emperor Li Song snorted. Lin Daoyuan, I really want to know, if you fight alone, how sure are you to win? Many people in the dark also looked at Lin Sun. The scene of Emperor Li Song's defeat was extremely strange. But after careful analysis, everyone was sure that without the help of Battle Emperor Wu Xiao, Lin Sun couldn't have done it alone. Lin Sun thought for a while and said seriously, maybe I can't beat him, but I can still protect myself. Emperor Li Song was in existence at the peak of Ancestor Realm. He was far more powerful than ordinary Ancestor Realm cultivators. If it was a pure battle, Lin Sun was destined to be no match for him. His only advantage was that he could control forbidden passing, which could give him a moment of preemptive opportunity. But even if he used forbidden passing, with his strength, he might be able to hurt his opponent, but it was absolutely impossible to kill him. As for the Order Phoenix Flame in the Sword Cauldron, it could only be used to fight against the power of Order, showing a passive defensive power. It was extremely difficult for Lin Sun to actively control and manipulate it. Of course, if it was the power of Order of Nirvana, it would be completely different. At least Nirvana could be completely controlled and used by him. And the Order Phoenix Flame was the power integrated into the Sword Cauldron. When its power was completely absorbed and refined by the Sword Cauldron, it could be controlled by Lin Sun. There was an essential difference between the two. Based on the judgment of his own cultivation, Lin Sun used the forbidden passing technique at the first time in the battle, just now, and let Big Yellow take action, so that he could suppress the Emperor Li Song at the first time. I might not be able to defeat him, but I can protect myself. Hearing Lin Sun's answer, the old monsters in the dark felt dizzy. Such an answer could be regarded as shocking. After all, Lin Daoyuan's cultivation was only at the 4th level Emperor realm. The word absolute really isn't something that we can estimate. When Emperor Li Song heard such an answer, a trace of a complicated expression couldn't help but suffuse his eyes. A young man that had cultivated for less than 100 years already possessed shocking potential that surpassed all the giants of the past and present, causing those old fellows that had lived for countless years to feel ashamed of their inferiority. What is sealed in that world? Big Yellow suddenly asked. The world that was shackled by countless black chains seemed extremely mysterious and terrifying. That is the foundation of the ancient Wasteland War Alliance. From the beginning of the first generation of the ancient Wasteland War Alliance, before they went to the other side of the starry sky, they would leave a part of their willpower behind and seal it in the world of Tau fire. There was a touch of pride in the eyes of Emperor Li Song. The Great Way is everlasting, and the flame will be passed on forever. It is by virtue of the many willpower sealed here that our ancient Wasteland War Alliance can live here for a long time without fear of the invasion of the Forbidden Order force. Only then did Lin Sun and Big Yellow understand why the ancestor of Li Tsong said at the beginning that even the nameless supreme emperor couldn't break through this place since ancient times. It turned out that it was because of the world of Tao fire. Similarly, if Emperor Li Tsong used the many willpower sealed in the world of Tao fire from the beginning, he and Big Yellow might not have the chance to break through this place at all. After understanding this, their perception of Emperor Li Tsong also changed a lot. In the past few years, Jin Chan, Fei Lan, Chun Linkong, Bai Di, and Zhao Yuanji have all mentioned your name, Lin Daoyuan. Not to mention that you've already passed through my test, so I naturally won't make things difficult for all of you. As Ancestor Li Tsong spoke, he turned around and left. The golden crow old monster is being suppressed within that world of lava. As for the rest, I'll leave it up to you guys to settle it yourselves. When his voice fell, his figure had disappeared. Let's go. Lin Sun didn't delay. Together with Big Yellow, he crossed the void where the meteorites were flying and floated into the world where the molten lava was erupting and the sea of fire was steaming. Soon, Lin Sun's eyes were fixed on a mountain of raging flames. There was a breath of a seal there. Swish! He moved across the void and arrived in an instant. Carefully looking at the seal, he couldn't help but be surprised. The power of the seal was transformed by the law of order. Did this mean that Golden Cicada, who was praised by the master of the square-inch master as higher than the sky, could control and use the power of order a long time ago? After years of cultivation, Lin Sun's understanding of the power of order had deepened. For example, the power of order in Nirvana Freedom Heaven, the power of order in the realm of True Dragon and Immortal Phoenix, the power of order formed by the tribulation of oblivion controlled by Shi, and even the forbidden power of order that covered the starry sky could all be called the original order of the world. However, their attributes were different, and their power was not the same. And this kind of power of order could only be controlled by those who were as powerful as the Emperor Ancestor Realm. This made Lin Sun couldn't help but have a bold idea. Could the key to breaking through the Emperor Ancestor Realm be related to controlling some kind of power of order? Then, Lin Sun shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He was only at the 4th level of the Emperor Realm. He was far from touching the threshold of the Ancestor Realm, let alone understanding the mysteries above the Ancestor Realm. What are you going to do? Big Yellow asked. Lin Sun's black eyes flickered. Of course, I'll break this seal first and release the suppressed golden crow. As he spoke, the abyssal sword cauldron rumbled and splashed out billions of rays of light. The abyssal Dao sword was wrapped in a layer of purple orderly phoenix flame, and it slashed down. To deal with the seal, he naturally had to use the power of order. Boom! An earth-shattering roar sounded. On the volcano that was erupting with lava, the seal power left by Golden Cicada suddenly fluctuated violently. Immediately after, there was a series of explosions, and at this moment, the seal power began to crack like a spider web. Haha, the seal has been broken. Golden Cicada, didn't you say that you would suppress me for 100 years? But how many years has it been now, and your seal has been broken? A cold and ruthless laughter resounded. Boom! A figure rushed out from under the volcano. At this moment, it was like a great sun had risen into the sky. It was dazzling and showed an incomparably violent and unrestrained power. He was dressed in a golden robe, and as he breathed, golden flames spewed out like rain, as if they were going to incinerate the heavens. His eyes were like a pair of scorching suns, blazing and resplendent, as if he was going to devour someone. Golden Crow Emperor, a veteran of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance, a cold-blooded and ruthless peerless hero who killed countless people. The peak of the 8th level of the Emperor Realm. Big Yellow quickly transmitted his voice, and his expression was obviously relaxed. Obviously, for the past countless years, this old golden crow had been stuck at the threshold of the Ancestor Realm, unable to enter. Lin Sun nodded calmly. Did the two of you work together to break the seal of Golden Cicada? The wild laughter gradually stopped, and the Golden Crow Emperor's eyes swept over Lin Sun and Big Yellow. He couldn't help but be a little surprised. Could such a person and a dog actually break the seal of Golden Cicada? Lin Sun said, "If I hadn't broken the seal, how would I have been able to see your glory?" The golden crow the arch had a nagging feeling that something was amiss, but he still nodded. "No matter why you are here or why you're doing this, I will remember your kindness. I will repay you in the future." Lin Sun said, "Why wait until the future? You can repay me now." The Golden Crow Emperor frowned and felt that something was wrong. He said, "Young man, why don't you tell me what you want to repay me?" "Your head." Lin Sun laughed. The Golden Crow Emperor's pupils constricted, and his face became cold and frightening. I knew there was something wrong. Then, he let out a long howl that shook the starry sky. "Which of you can tell me what's going on with this man and dog?" No one answered. From the moment Emperor Li Song admitted defeat, everyone in the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance had already realized that this was a personal grudge and couldn't be involved. The Golden Crow Emperor's heart skipped a beat when he didn't get a response. He increasingly realized that something was wrong. He stared at Lin Sun coldly and asked, "Who are you?" Big Yellow sneered. "You don't even know him, and you still clamored to find him for revenge? Are you kidding me?" His expression was full of mockery. However, the Golden Crow Emperor wasn't angry. He seemed to think of something, and his eyes widened. "You're the Lin Sun who destroyed my Sunset Tang Valley and stole my Fusang Divine Tree." Lin Sun said indifferently, "Sunset Tang Valley was indeed destroyed by me, but the Fusang Divine Tree wasn't stolen. It was my spoils of war." "It's really you, you little bastard." The Golden Crow Emperor was furious. He never expected that Lin Sun would take the initiative to come to him before he could seek revenge. It seemed incredible, but it happened just like that. "No." The Golden Crow Emperor, who was originally furious, suddenly frowned, and his eyes flickered. "As far as I know, Lin Sun, that little bastard, hadn't become an emperor decades ago, and you were already at the 4th level of the Emperor realm. How could it be him?" Lin Sun and Big Yellow couldn't help laughing. It was obvious that the Golden Crow Emperor knew nothing about what had happened in the outside world during these years of being suppressed. "Cut the crap. As long as you tell me how Tian Ke died, I can let you die with dignity." Lin Sun's eyes were cold. Wu Ke, the spirit of the insignificant spiritual Bao, had been suppressed in the Sunset Tang Valley for countless years and suffered countless tortures, humiliation, and torture. And it was the Golden Crow Emperor who suppressed Wu Ke. This revenge should be taken by Lin Sun. Chapter 24:14. Although he felt that something was wrong, he couldn't help but burst into laughter when he heard Lin Sun's threat. It was as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. This was the first time he had been threatened by a young man who was only at the 4th level of the Martial Emperor realm. He's laughing like a maniac. Big Yellow's eyes were gloomy. "I won't be able to laugh later." Lin Sun's expression was indifferent. As expected, the Golden Crow Emperor stopped laughing very soon. He suddenly realized that the man and the dog were looking at him with pity, as if they were looking at an idiot. This caused his expression to become incomparably cold. He said in an indifferent tone, "Since you have just broken the seal, I will give you a chance to admit your mistakes. Remember, no matter who you are, this is the ancient Wasteland Battle Union, a place where outsiders are not allowed to behave atrociously." Big Yellow grinned. "All these years, the cultivators of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance didn't rescue you like we did." This was also what the Golden Crow Emperor felt, that something was wrong. Otherwise, he wouldn't have wasted his breath and would have attacked immediately. The Golden Crow Emperor's expression was uncertain. He was about to say something when he saw Lin Sun dashing towards him. He was obviously impatient. This made the Golden Crow Emperor furious. Why did young people nowadays have no patience at all? "You're courting death," he shouted coldly. A torrent of laws surged in front of him like the sun, eventually condensing into a giant seal that blasted towards Lin Sun. The Great World Burning Seal. It contained the divine flames of the Golden Crow and interweaved with the laws of the Emperor Dao. It was filled with extreme destructive power and could burn the heavens and the earth. The Golden Crow Emperor was confident that with his power at the peak of the 8th level of the Martial Emperor realm, He could kill anyone below the 8th level of the martial emperor realm with just one seal, let alone a small character at the 4th level of the martial emperor realm. The only thing that he was wary of was Big Yellow. He vaguely remembered that a long time ago, there was a big dog called Battle Emperor Shao who ran amok in the starry sky with monstrous ferocity. However, he wasn't sure if the big yellow dog in front of him was Battle Emperor Shao. Therefore, he focused more of his attention on Big Yellow when he blasted out the seal. He was on guard and on guard. However, something happened that caught the Golden Crow the Arch off guard. Lin Sun rushed forward and casually waved his palm, smashing the great world-burning seal like a hot knife through butter, bursting out thousands of dazzling light rain. Under his palm, the great world incinerating seal was like paper. Not good. The Golden Crow the Arch finally realized that something was wrong. He let out a long howl, and a pair of golden wings that were thousands of feet long appeared behind him. They were like clouds that hung in the sky, and they suddenly flapped down. Golden Crow, heaven, slashing wings. A pair of golden wings were like scissors that tore apart the sky, and they were suffused with blazing and dazzling divine flames of the laws as they slashed down furiously. This expanse of heaven and earth was being sliced apart, the void was being melted, and all things were being destroyed. The peerlessly fierce and destructive aura it emanated could be said to be world-shaking, and it was unimaginably terrifying. Lin Sun was unhurried, and his expression was composed. When the golden wings of the laws slashed down towards him, he suddenly stretched out his hands, and then he grabbed and tore space apart. Puffed. The golden wings that were thousands of feet long and exuded terrifying destructive power were actually torn apart by Lin Sun's hands, and golden divine flames rained down from the sky. What a great move to tear a chicken leg with your bare hands. Big Yellow praised from afar. The Golden Crow the Arch was so angry that he almost vomited blood, but at the same time his heart was in turmoil and his hair stood on end. Only then did he realize that the young man in front of him was a peerless Arch. The combat strength that Lin Sun displayed was so heaven-defying that it had even completely subverted his understanding and imagination. Without hesitation, the Golden Crow the Arch used all his strength and spat out. With a clang, a winged sword that seemed to be made of divine gold swept out. It was completely fiery red, and its destructive aura shook the heavens. Fire Feather the Arch Sword. This was the Arch weapon that the Golden Crow the Arch had nurtured for countless years. Under this sword, everything would turn into ashes. Slash! The Golden Crow the Arch roared, and his beard and hair fluttered in the wind. His aura was like that of an ancient fire god, extremely domineering. However, the sword cauldron appeared in front of Lin Sun. With a bang, it suppressed the Fire Feather the Arch sword, and a deafening wail sounded. The Golden Crow the Arch turned pale with fright. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun charged forward and punched out. Thousands of beams of light burst forth from his fist and easily broke through the Golden Crow Thearch's defense. All the defensive power around the Golden Crow the Arch also exploded like firecrackers under this punch. Boom! With a single punch, the Golden Crow the Arch, who was at the peak of the 8th level of the Arch realm, had his chest caved in and his body bent like a prawn as he was sent flying. Before he could stabilize himself, Lin Sun had already appeared out of thin air. He grabbed the Golden Crow Thearch's neck and smashed it against a majestic volcano. Boom! The entire mountain collapsed and exploded. Smoke and dust filled the air, causing the entire world to tremble. Big Yellow was dumbfounded. This kid was already so ferocious with just his own combat strength. Looking at the battlefield, the ground had caved in, and the Golden Crow Thearch's head was buried in it. His feet were above the ground, and he was nailed there. At the side, Lin Sun looked down and said coldly, "Are you going to speak or not? You're courting death." The Golden Crow the Arch crawled out with great difficulty. His face was twisted and hideous, and his eyes were about to pop out as he roared. However, just as he was about to attack, Lin Sun grabbed his body and smashed him into the ground again and again like a sledgehammer. Bang! 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 The ground cracked and collapsed, and smoke and dust spread like a storm. Even Big Yellow felt his heart ache when he saw the domineering power. In just a short while, the Golden Crow Thearch's face was already swollen, and his body was damaged. His hair was disheveled, and he looked miserable. "Are you going to speak or not?" Lin Sun asked. "You want me to lower my head with this little bit of torture? Don't even think about it." The Golden Crow Thearch roared. He was so angry that he was about to go crazy. He was at the peak of the 8th level of the Thearch realm, but now he was being beaten up by a young man. This made him so ashamed that he wanted to go crazy. "If you don't want to speak, then fine. Let's see how long you can last." As Lin Sun spoke, he lifted the Golden Crow Thearch and smashed him into the ground, causing the sky to collapse and the earth to cave in. Blood splattered everywhere, and he smashed him into a soul-stirring manner. In this fiery world, there was a series of muffled explosions. Big Yellow couldn't help but mutter to himself, "This is too brutal. It's completely tyrannical." All the old monsters of the Ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance who noticed this scene couldn't help but gasp. Their scalps were numb, and their hearts were filled with horror. They all felt pain in their hearts and trembled. It was really unimaginable that someone as powerful as the Golden Crow Thearch would be abused so miserably. Bang! In the end, the Golden Crow Thearch's body exploded, and only his primordial spirit was left. Before it could escape, it was firmly held in Lin Sun's hands. This time, before Lin Sun could speak, the Golden Crow Thearch screamed in horror, "Speak, I'll speak." "Spineless," Big Yellow muttered disdainfully. However, the Golden Crow Thearch couldn't care less about this. He told Lin Sun about the grudges between him and Tian K back then. It turned out that Tian K was the same as the Golden Crow Thearch. He was one of the first powerhouses to enter the Starry Sky ancient path from the ancient Desolation realm. However, the two of them were born to be enemies. They were like fire and water, and they had many conflicts. Later on the way to the Kunlun ruins to search for opportunities, Tian K was besieged by a group of powerful enemies from the 6 Great Dao Courts when he was fighting for opportunities at the Dao Suppression Cliff, which was regarded as one of the 3 forbidden areas of Kunlun. At that time, Tian K fought alone against enemies from all directions and staged an unparalleled battle. When he finally broke out of the encirclement, his body had already shattered, and only his primordial spirit was left. Originally, Tian K had a chance to escape, but it was at that time that the Golden Crow Thearch, who was lying in ambush, attacked without hesitation and killed the remaining primordial spirit of Tian Quebec. At this point, the Golden Crow Thearch actually revealed a carefree expression and said, "That fellow, Tian K, relies on his extraordinary foundation and is the best in the Tao of archery. He has never taken me seriously, but so what if he's strong? Didn't he still die in my hands?" "You're lying." Suddenly, a violent and angry shout resounded. The artifact spirit of the insignificant spirit Bao, Wu Kei, rushed out. His eyes were filled with deep hatred as he stared at the Golden Crow Thearch. He gritted his teeth and said, "Back then, it was because my master wanted to save you that he was besieged by those enemies. But what about you? After you escaped, not only did you not repay him, you even cruelly attacked your master, who saved your life." The Golden Crow Thearch's expression changed slightly, and then he sneered, "You little be*starred, you didn't participate in that battle at all. How could you know what happened back then? Don't slander me." Wu Kei took a deep breath and said word by word, "You're right. If I had participated in the battle back then, none of those who besieged my master would have been able to escape. You ungrateful old be*starred, you definitely wouldn't have killed my master." Ungrateful? Who in the Ancient Wasteland Fighting Alliance doesn't know that Tian K and I are enemies? The Golden Crow Thearch said coldly. Wu Kei was furious, and his face was livid. "At this time, you're still quibbling. My master really despises despicable and shameless bastards like you. But he still put aside his prejudice and risked his life to save you. Why? Isn't it because my master couldn't stand by and watch you die because you were also a member of the Ancient Wasteland Fighting Alliance?" Who would have thought that the ally he saved would turn out to be the murderer who killed him? After knowing all this, Lin Sun in yellow looked at the golden crow of the arch with cold eyes. This old bastard was simply too despicable and despicable. At this time, even those old monsters who were watching all this in secret couldn't help but change their expressions. Because they didn't know that there was such an inside story behind the grievances between the Golden Crow of the Arch and Wu Kei. If they had known this, how could the entire ancient wasteland fighting alliance tolerate such a cruel and despicable bastard? There's no proof. What do you have to prove it? The Golden Crow Thearch's voice became colder and colder. Wu Kei, don't forget that if it weren't for your master, I would have killed you as soon as I suppressed you. How could I let you live until now? Wu Kei was so angry that he laughed. Old Beatrice starred. Do you still have any shame? Back then, in order to kill me, you racked your brains and exhausted all means, but in the end, it was all in vain. You could only suppress me. Why do you say that you're grateful for my master's kindness? The Golden Crow Arch sneered. Who would believe something without evidence? It doesn't matter whether I believe it or not. At this moment, Lin Sun's eyes were cold and he said indifferently, Anyway, you're going to die. Genius 1 Second Remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 24:15. Lin Sun's words made the Golden Crow Emperor's spirit tumble, as if the last support in his heart had been shattered. He shouted hoarsely, Guys of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance, are you going to watch them kill me without doing anything? Have you forgotten the covenant and rules we made at the beginning? His voice shook the starry sky with a sense of anger and panic. However, there was still no response. This silence caused the Golden Crow Arch to completely break down. Lin Sun imprisoned his divine soul and threw it to Wu Kei, saying, I'll leave it to you. Thank you, young master. Wu Kei was excited. He took a deep breath and left with the Golden Crow Emperor's spirit in a flash. Not long after, the Golden Crow Emperor's painful roar sounded in the distance, making people shudder. Lin Sun's expression was as usual. He knew how cruel the torture and humiliation Wu Kei had suffered during the countless years he was suppressed in the Sunset Tang Valley. Now, it was time for Wu Kei to vent the anger that had accumulated in his heart for many years. A quarter of an hour later, Wu Kei returned with a frustrated expression, and he revealed an indescribable feeling of loneliness. What's wrong? Lin Sun asked. Although the enemy is dead, Master can't come back to life after all. Wu Kei sighed and then squeezed out a bright smile, saying, However, after killing that old bastard, it's like breaking a shackle in my heart. I feel unprecedentedly relaxed. Thank you, Master. This time he called Lin Sun Master instead of young master as before. Lin Sun smiled. It's good that you're fine. Lin Sun was also gratified to be able to help Wu Kei solve an old grudge this time. On the same day, Lin Sun and Big Yellow left the abandoned planet region together. Watching them leave, Emperor Li Tsong and the other powerhouses of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance all sighed with emotion. Lin Daoyuan, this name was destined to be like the sun, shining alone in the starry sky. The vast universe arc shuttled through the starry sky, and 7 days passed in a hurry. On this day, Lin Sun, who was sitting cross-legged in meditation at the bow of the ark, suddenly opened his eyes, stretched out his right index finger, and drew a line in the void. A strand of sword chi condensed, and it was calm like water, translucent, ethereal, and ethereal as if it didn't exist. Big Yellow, who was sleeping and snoring in the distance, seemed to have been shocked instead. Its fur stood on end as it suddenly opened its eyes, and the vital energy in its entire body rumbled as it almost made a move. However, when he saw it clearly, he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. His gaze was also attracted by the plain and clean sword chi. Gradually, it couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. What kind of sword was this? All Daos had been purified and returned to one, and it revealed an extremely simple and natural aura. It seemed to be too ordinary, yet the profundities of the Grand Tao contained within it caused it to feel a form of shock that assaulted its face, and even its heart and mind felt shocked. Is this the sword intent that you've just comprehended? Big Yellow could not help but ask. Lin Sun waved his hand, and the sword Qi disappeared. He said casually, "This is my 10,000 swords in one." What do you think? 10,000 swords returning to one? It's a very cliché name, but it's really amazing. Big Yellow clicked his tongue in wonder. With his cultivation, he had seen the power of many unparalleled sword emperors all over the world, but he couldn't see through the profundities of Lin Sun's sword at a glance. It was amazing and ethereal, which was absolutely rare. Look at this sword again. As Lin Sun said, a wisp of sword Qi suddenly condensed in his mind. One divided into two, two divided into four, more and more, deducing the infinite number of eternal sands. In a trance, it gave people the feeling that at the beginning of chaos, there were one and two, and the clear and turbid Qi transformed into the world. Then all things sprouted and emerged. The sun and the moon, mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas, all appeared one by one. Later, the sword Qi derived scenes such as the change of the world, the rotation of the four seasons, and the changes of all phenomena. It was just a wisp of sword Qi, but it deduced a kind of unprecedented phenomenon of the rotation of the world from nothing. Witnessing this scene, Big Yellow was stunned. He swallowed his saliva with difficulty and said, "What's the name of this sword?" Whoosh! Lin Sun's sleeves turned up, and the sword disappeared quietly. One sword can give birth to thousands of Tao, and one sword could destroy thousands of Dharma. It can be called one sword of life and death. Big Yellow's heart was like rolling thunder, and he asked, "Anything else?" Lin Sun laughed. "The third sword is just like the Tao, invisible, nameless, and indescribable. It is omnipresent and omnipresent." With a swoosh, Big Yellow's figure moved and disappeared in place. In the place where he was lying, a straight crack appeared in the void, and the sword Qi had long disappeared. Big Yellow was stunned for a while, and suddenly shouted, "What's the name of this sword? I haven't thought about it yet. What do you think of it as beyond the rules?" Lin Sun said, "Beyond the rules?" Big Yellow's imagination ran wild. The road of Tao was free to do whatever one wanted without going beyond the rules. However, this strike was actually going beyond the rules. Such boldness was simply going to surpass the rules and order of the world. The great rock hates the heavens for being too low when it spreads its wings. In the future, when I perfect my Emperor's Sutra, the power of this sword will not only surpass the world, but it will also surpass the great Tao and jump out of its cage. Lin Sun's black eyes were calm, with a trace of longing. Today, he'd completely fused the Taishian sword scripture, the never-returning sword scripture, the instant Tao severance sword scripture, and the Sky Destroyer sword scripture into one, and he'd utilized this as a foundation to develop it to the extreme, transforming it, and creating a sword Tao that truly belonged to him. 10,000 swords in one. One sword of destruction. One sword of beyond the rules. The three kinds of Tao ultimacy completely became a part of the Great Way Furnace Sutra. However, the Great Way Furnace Sutra was not a complete Emperor Sutra. Like Lin Sun, there were still dozens of Tao ultimacy that had not been completely integrated. For example, Samsara Sutra, Li Xuanwei's Green Lotus Enlightenment, Big Brother's Fighting Saint Method, Xuankong's Everlasting and Flawless, Shuya's Great Way Sutra, and so on. However, Lin Sun was not in a hurry. There were 9 levels in the Emperor realm. With the improvement of his cultivation, the Great Way Furnace Sutra was destined to be constantly perfected until it reached the complete level. Alas, you are really a freak. Big Yellow suddenly sighed. You are only at the 4th level of the Emperor realm, but you can already fight against the Emperor Ancestor. Throughout the ages, there is no one like you. He said this with emotion. The gap between the 4th level of the Emperor realm and the Emperor Ancestor was more than 1 level. Some geniuses and peerless heroes might be able to surpass 1 level and kill opponents who are stronger than themselves. Even the great Emperor Ju In in the primitive times could surpass 2 or 3 levels at most, which was already unparalleled. But compared with Lin Sun, it was completely insignificant. Now, Even if you travel alone in the starry sky, unless you encounter some special taboos, there is no way you could be defeated. Otherwise, even the Emperor Ancestor wouldn't be able to do anything to you. Big Yellow let out another long sigh. He suddenly realized that compared to a character like Lin Sun, anyone would feel depressed. Everyone's brilliance would be dimmed in front of Lin Sun. This was too much of a blow to him. Do you think if I break through to the 5th level of the Emperor Realm, the Secreti Opening Realm, can I kill the Emperor Ancestor in a head-on battle? Lin Sun asked. Big Yellow's answer was resolute and decisive. The Ancestor Realm is the highest natural chasm in the Emperor Realm, and it controls the grand Tao profundities that belong to the Ancestral Reversion Realm. Even those heaven-defying and ruthless figures that possessed extraordinary ability during the primeval times were unable to break through this natural chasm. After a pause, Big Yellow revealed a playful smile. Not to mention the 5th level, even the 6th, 7th, or 8th level can't do it. Lin Sun frowned. No precedent. No. Big Yellow knew what Lin Sun was thinking at a glance, and said, perhaps your power will change again and again with the improvement of your cultivation, but as long as you can't touch the threshold of Ancestor Realm, no matter how strong your power is, it will be in vain. The word ancestor is far from as simple as you think. Lin Sun obviously didn't believe it, and said indifferently, back in the Deity Phoenix realm, I killed an Emperor Ancestor with my own hands. You mean the 3rd Supreme Elder of the White Tiger bloodline? Big Yellow had obviously recalled it as well, and then it laughed with ridicule. This is related to some secrets of the martial Ancestor realm. Even though that old geezer is an Imperial Ancestor, he hasn't truly established and grasped an ancestral root law of a grand Tao. At most, he can only be considered to be a figure at the bottom of the martial Ancestor realm. Lin Sun pondered. Only those who open and control the ancestral source law can be called the real Emperor Ancestor. Yes, they're also called the Ancestor of a Tao. As he spoke, Big Yellow pointed at his nose and said proudly, for example, I spent an immeasurable amount of effort in order to establish a single grand Tao ancestral root law, so it's not a problem for me to take on 3 ordinary Imperial Ancestors by myself. Lin Sun vaguely understood. In fact, among the Emperor Ancestor realm in this world, there may not be 1 in 100 who could be called the Ancestor of a Tao. Big Yellow sighed. And you should know that in this starry sky ancient path, the existence of Emperor Ancestor realm is as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Even the sects as powerful as the Shunjiao ancient sect and the Hidden Land realm only have a few Emperor Ancestor realm existences. And the real Ancestor of a Tao is 1 in 100. What about she? Lin Sun suddenly asked, what realm is she in? Big Yellow glanced at Lin Sun. Don't be too ambitious. Like she, a transcendent existence, has already taken the step to leave the threshold of the Emperor Ancestor realm like master. That realm, only the Ancestor of a Tao like me is qualified to seek. As for you, you'd better cultivate honestly. At this point, Lin Sun sighed with emotion. The Emperor Ancestor realm could already stand at the top of the starry sky. If it was beyond the scope of the Ancestor realm, how incredible would it be? While the two were talking, suddenly a ripple of void teleportation came from the starry sky, far away. Lin Sun and Big Yellow looked at each other and restrained their thoughts. Since ancient times, those who dared to move on the vast starry sky ancient path had to at least have the cultivation of the Emperor realm. Otherwise, they would either encounter an unexpected disaster or be lost in this boundless starry sky. Genius 1 Second Remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 24:16. In just a short moment, the void tumbled, and 3 figures appeared. The leader was an old man in a black robe. He stood on auspicious clouds, and his figure was tall. His eyes transformed into a terrifying divine light of lightning. Beside him was a burly man with a curly beard and black armor, and a beautiful and graceful woman in fiery red clothes with a feathered crown on her head. The 3 of them stood in the starry sky, and when they moved, they brought along ripples of Tao light. They naturally possessed the supreme might of an emperor stage cultivator. When he saw the vast universe arc, as well as Lin Sun and Big Yellow on it. The curly-bearded man could not help but chuckle. It's rare to fly through the starry sky with a yellow-furred dog. The scarlet-clothed woman's eyes were like blades as she swept a glance at Lin Sun and Big Yellow before retracting her gaze. Let's go. It's more important to hurry. I heard that the old fellows from the primordial, Chinquin, and Black Yellow Dao courts had already taken action before us. At this moment, Lin Sun had already changed his appearance and restrained his aura with Big Yellow. Moreover, they were riding the vast universe Arkansas. If one did not use their divine consciousness to pry into the energy around their bodies, it would be very easy to miss them. In fact, it was extremely unlikely for them to meet anyone while traversing the boundless starry sky. The reason why the curly-bearded man was attracted was because they had been traveling for several days. This was the first time they had seen such a boat, a person, and a dog. They could not help but feel curious. That's right. It's more important to hurry. The flying immortal river that's heading to the Kunlun ruins has actually reappeared in the world. This opportunity is too precious. The curly-bearded man nodded. You're wrong. The black-robed old man in the lead corrected him. This is Emperor Shurtiendi using the forbidden power of order to forcefully open the entrance to the Kunlun ruins. It's for us to enter and go together. At this point, he glanced at Lin Sun and Big Yellow and did not say anything else. He only waved his hand and said, "Let's go." The three of them did not delay and teleported away. From the beginning to the end, they did not take Lin Sun and Big Yellow seriously at all. Weren't you angry just now? They called you a yellow-furred dog. Lin Sun looked at the three great emperors in the distance. Big Yellow snorted coldly and said, "If I make a move, how would you know that these three old things from the Devil's Court are heading to the Kunlun ruins?" According to them, the entrance to the Kunlun ruins was actually opened by Heavenly Emperor Shur. At the end of its words, a worried expression appeared on its face. Heavenly Emperor Shur was still alive, but what about its master? Lin Sun's black eyes flickered. These are not the only ones heading to Kunlun ruins. Let's follow them and take a look. Indeed, he did not expect to hear such news on the way to the Kunlun ruins. He could not help but worry about second senior brother Zhong Qiu's situation. Lin Sun immediately put away the vast universe arc and teleported through the void with Big Yellow as they chased after the black-robed old man's group. The starry sky was vast and boundless. Why do I feel that the young man I saw earlier is somewhat similar to someone? On the way, the crimson-clothed woman suddenly frowned and spoke. Who? The bearded man asked curiously. Lin Sun, Lin Daoyuan. The crimson-clothed woman pondered. Although I've never seen him in person, I've seen the illusion jade slip related to him several times. That young man just now really looks like Lin Daoyuan. The black-robed old man and the bearded man looked at each other, and their pupils constricted at the same time. Earlier, they were only focused on traveling and did not think about this. At this moment, when they thought about it carefully, they suddenly recalled that there was something wrong with the man and dog they saw earlier. They were too calm. If it was an ordinary cultivator, which one of them would not be filled with fear and reverence when they saw Emperor stage existences like them? Now that you mention it, I remember that young man just now is indeed very similar to that little remnant from Mount Fongsuan. The bearded man's eyes flickered with a terrifying luster. This kid isn't some little remnant. Ever since the end of Nirvana Heaven a few years ago, he's already the great Emperor Ju Yin who has shaken the starry sky. He's the first in 100,000 years. The black-robed old man's eyes were gloomy. If what I saw before is really him, then it's interesting. He disappeared for 3 years, but now he's crossing the starry sky by boat. If we can take this opportunity to capture him. Before he finished his words, the crimson-clothed woman and the bearded man understood, and their eyes became blazing. Who wouldn't be tempted by Emperor Daoyuan, who had the fortune of Nirvana Heaven? Let's go and have a look. With that, the three turned back, but when they came to the area where they saw Lin Sun and the others before, there was no sign of Lin Sun and the others in the vast starry sky. Alas, the burly man was annoyed. Our appearance before must have alarmed this kid. So he took the opportunity to escape. The black-robed old man spread his divine awareness like a tide in all directions to investigate, but after a while, his face also became gloomy. In this area, there was no valuable clue left. After all, he's a peerless great emperor. According to the ancient records, this kid's current combat strength isn't comparable to an ordinary great emperor. It's reasonable that he could escape without a trace. Although she said so, the crimson-clothed woman couldn't help but feel a little unwilling. It was such a pity to miss such an opportunity. Forget it, let's go. The black-robed old man flicked his sleeves and left, and the other two followed closely behind. In the dark, Lin Sun and Goldie, who witnessed all this, looked at each other strangely. These three old fellows, the strongest one, is only in the 7th level of Emperor Realm, and the other two are in the 5th and 6th level of Emperor Realm. With such a lineup, they actually want to take advantage of you. They're really bold. Goldie chuckled. Thinking about it, who could imagine that in just a few years after Ju Yin became a great emperor, Lin Sun had broken through by leaps and bounds and reached the 4th level of Emperor Realm, Metaphysic. Who would dare to believe that the current Lin Sun could arm wrestle with an emperor ancestor? Lin Sun said casually, "It's not that they're bold, but what happened in the dark world obviously hasn't spread to this ancient path. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't dare to be so fearless." As he spoke, the two of them continued to follow. With Goldie's ability, it couldn't be any easier for him to not be discovered by the black-robed group. Along the way, the black-robed old man and the others probably didn't expect that the opportunity they thought they had missed would actually be secretly following behind them. Along the way, Lin Sun and Goldie found out about the black-robed old man and the other two's identities through their conversation. The black-robed old man was called Absolute Martial Emperor, and he was at the 7th level of Emperor Realm. He was an elder who held great authority in the demon court. The burly man and the crimson-clothed woman were Battle Emperor Hun Tong and Red Rainbow, Sword Emperor respectively. They were at the 5th and 6th level of Emperor Realm respectively. The three of them had received orders to head to the Kunlun ruins to listen to Emperor Shi Tiandi's orders. It was said that they were going to trap and kill the Tower Master of Bronze Sparrow Tower. It wasn't just the demon court that had received the order. Primordial, Panwu, Qinquan, Black Yellow, and other Dao courts had also sent emperor stage figures to the Kunlun ruins. Other than that, it was said that some primordial imperial clans and the 10 great combat clans had also participated in this operation. Lin Sun and Goldie were pleasantly surprised and worried when they heard this news. They were pleasantly surprised because all of this proved that the Tower Master of Bronze Sparrow Tower was still alive. They were worried that Emperor Shi Tiandi's order to gather so many great emperors from the ancient orthodoxies to participate might very well put the Tower Master of Bronze Sparrow Tower in an extremely dangerous situation. Should we kill these three old things first? Goldie's killing intent surged as he was ready to make a move. Lin Sun shook his head. Don't act rashly. It won't be too late to take action after we investigate the specific situation. We don't want to alert the enemy. If that's the case, second senior brother's situation will become even more disadvantageous. Goldie took a deep breath and suppressed the killing intent in his heart. That's the only way. A day later, a mysterious galaxy passageway appeared in the boundless starry sky. It was like a narrow and winding rainbow bridge that extended into the depths of the dark starry sky. Ancient Starhan Path, a starry sky path that led to the Kunlun Dao ruins, had existed since the beginning of the primordial times. Every time the entrance to the Kunlun ruins opened and the flying immortal river appeared, the powerhouses that gathered from all over the starry sky had to pass through the ancient Starhan Path to see the surging trajectory of the flying immortal river and enter the Kunlun ruins. Stepping on the ancient Starhan Path, he strolled up Kunlun. In the Dao hymn left behind by the Master of the Heart Core, there was a description of the ancient Starhan Path. He viewed the ancient Starhan Path as his shoes, and he strolled up the Kunlun ruins with a transcendent aura. The ancient Starhan Path was formed from countless stars. It was like a sparkling jade belt that was winding and deep, and it stretched across the void. After the group of three arrived, the black-robed old man, the martial emperor of extinction, flew straight along the ancient Starhan path and flew towards the depths. Ever since they arrived, they could only fly and did not dare teleport. The reason was that the ancient Starhan path was filled with the mysterious and obscure power of the Great Tao. Once they teleported, it was very likely that they would instantly lose their way. It was the same for Lin Sun and Big Yellow when they arrived. Back then, when Lin Sun first entered the Kunlun ruins, it was Ah who led the way. They set off from the ancient Desolation domain and shuttled through the vast void. After nearly half a month of travel, they finally arrived at the secret realm where the flying immortal river was. Lin Sun had long forgotten the path back then. He only remembered that when Ahu led the way, he had to rely on the aura of the flying immortal token to guide him. But this time it was different. He would enter Kunlun through the ancient Starhan path. The Kunlun ruins is divided into 3 forbidden and 9 secret places. It's regarded as the ancestral court of the Great Tao, and it's accompanied by danger and fortune. Every time it opens, it will attract many extraordinary people from all over the starry sky, but only 1 in 1,000 can survive. It's a veritable place of great danger, and no one has been able to see through its secrets. Big Yellow led the way as he spoke. A long time ago, he had also come to the Kunlun ruins and walked through the ancient Starhan path. Fellow Taoist in front, please wait. Not long after Lin Sun and Big Yellow moved forward, a mellow voice suddenly sounded from afar. A group of divine rainbows flew over, emitting dazzling and gorgeous radiance. At this moment, Lin Sun and Big Yellow's pupils constricted. Chapter 24:17. Just as Big Yellow was about to react, Lin Sun gave him a look to stop him. When the two of them followed, they used a stealth technique. With Big Yellow's strength, ordinary Emperor Stage cultivators wouldn't be able to detect their existence at all. Sure enough, after the group of figures arrived on the ancient starry sky path, they hurriedly flashed into the distance. At the same time, the Absolute Movement Martial Emperor, Battle Emperor Huntong, and Red Rainbow, Sword Emperor stopped and turned their heads. So it's fellow cultivators from the Panwu Dao Court. The Absolute Movement Martial Emperor recognized the origins of that group at a glance, and his expression instantly relaxed. A smile appeared on his face as he chatted with them. Not long after, the Emperor Stage cultivators from the 2 ancient Dao courts met up and moved forward together. Lin Sun and Big Yellow looked at each other after witnessing this scene in the dark, and they relaxed before following them again. The ancient Starry Han path was long and winding, and it was impossible to teleport. After an entire 6 hours, an incomparably enormous nebula vortex appeared in the void, and it was like a bloody mouth that had opened in the universe. The Absolute Movement Martial Emperor and the Panwu Dao Court's Emperor Stage cultivators rushed in one after another. Let's go. Big Yellow led the way and charged over with Lin Sun. At the end of the nebula vortex was the secret realm where the flying immortal river was. At that time, as long as they followed the flying immortal river, they would be able to enter the Kunlun ruins. Buzz. After entering the nebula vortex, Lin Sun and Big Yellow instantly arrived in a world that was filled with chaotic chi and radiance. The heavens and the earth were boundless. A thunderous roar of water could be heard from afar, and a heavenly river could be seen hanging upside down on the horizon in the far distance. The mighty river seemed to have come from the sky, and it was a spectacular sight. However, when Big Yellow and Lin Sun appeared, they were stunned. They saw that their surroundings had already been surrounded by figures, and they seemed to be waiting for a rabbit to come to them. They had sealed off this area. These figures were the Absolute Movement Martial Emperor's group and the Panwu Dao Court's group. They'd been discovered. Lin Sun and Big Yellow immediately realized their situation, and they couldn't help but be surprised. Soon after, they calmed down, removed the secret technique to conceal their auras, and revealed themselves. When the 3 martial emperors saw their appearances, they revealed looks of disbelief. So, the ones who were tracking us are you. Instantly, their eyes became bright and burning. Originally, They felt it was a pity that they'd missed such a great fortuitous encounter. But who would have imagined that it would actually come knocking on their door? Do you recognize this man and dog? On the side of the Panwu court, there were 5 martial emperors. The one in the lead was a black-haired old man in a black robe. He had a dignified bearing, and his body was surrounded by strands of terrifying silver lightning. In his hand was a copper mirror that was inscribed with profound markings of the Tao. Battle Emperor Jingya. He was one of the elders of the Panwu imperial court, an 8th-level emperor realm expert. Previously, it was with the copper mirror in his hand that he saw through Lin Sun and Goldie, who had been secretly tracking Martial Emperor's group. However, Battle Emperor Jingya was worried about alerting the enemy at that time, so he pretended not to know anything. Only when he met up with the Absolute Movement Martial Emperor and the others did he transmit the news. Thus, the group of Martial Emperors decided to set up an ambush at the entrance of a secret realm and capture the pursuers in one fell swoop. Of course I recognize him. If I'm not wrong, this child is the famous Dao Yuan Emperor, or should I say, the remnant of Mount Fengtsuan. The Absolute Movement Martial Emperor didn't hide anything and locked his eyes on Lin Sun. Dao Yuan Emperor, Battle Emperor Jingya, and the others were agitated. They all showed strange expressions and looked at Lin Sun in a different light. It seemed that they had never expected that they would catch such a big fish while waiting for the hare to come. Suddenly, Goldie snorted with dissatisfaction. He, the great Battle Emperor Shao, was right in front of them, but everyone's eyes were focused on Lin Sun and ignored him. Hearing this snort, a martial emperor from the Panwu imperial court seemed to remember something and said in surprise, "That dog seems to be Battle Emperor Shao, who has followed the Bronze Sparrow Pavilion Master for many years." Everyone turned to look, and some people couldn't help but change their expressions. Battle Emperor Shao, who didn't know the number 1 general under the Bronze Sparrow Pavilion Master? It was just that no one had thought that a yellow-furred dog like this would be connected to the name Battle Emperor Shao. This was too surprising. It seems that if I want to capture this Dao Yuan Emperor, I must kill this old dog first. Battle Emperor Jingya's eyes were cold. In his memory, Battle Emperor Shao wasn't that terrifying. At most, he was a loyal dog under the Bronze Sparrow Pavilion Master. Although he had left behind a fearsome reputation in the starry sky a long time ago, it was mostly because his master was the Bronze Sparrow Pavilion Master. Ha ha! Goldie was so angry that he laughed. These old bastards were really blind. If you show your true cultivation, would they dare to underestimate you? Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh. These old fellows probably didn't know how powerful Goldie was now. What right do these idiots have to make me show my power? Goldie was very disdainful and arrogant, his dog face full of arrogance. The conversation between the two was calm and composed, as if they didn't have the slightest awareness of being prey. Absolute Martial Emperor, Battle Emperor Jingya, and the others couldn't help but be stunned. They were already in such a desperate situation, yet this man and dog still dared to be so arrogant. I can see that they have something to rely on. Everyone, don't be careless. When we fight later, we must use all our strength. Absolute Martial Emperor reminded. Everyone nodded. As Martial Emperors, they naturally wouldn't be careless. Goldie smiled and said, "There's no need to fight later. I will give you a dignified death. Kill yourselves now, and I guarantee that I will bury you one by one and erect tombstones so that the future generations will remember how you died. Old dog, your master is already on the verge of death, yet you still dare to be so arrogant. Aren't you afraid of being killed?" Battle Emperor Hun Tong, who was like a burly man, shouted, "It's better if we kill him. We can make stew." Another Martial Emperor said with a smile. It seemed like a provocation, but the atmosphere was extremely oppressive and murderous. Their conversation was a formless test and confrontation. Is that so? Goldie's eyes were gloomy. Then I would like to see if you have the ability to do so. Swoosh! His figure disappeared into thin air and appeared in front of Battle Emperor Hun Tong in the next instant. Piss off! Battle Emperor Hun Tong roared as his black armor glowed and emitted an earth-shattering power. He formed a seal with his right hand and smashed it forward. Boom! A rain of light rained down furiously, and the space collapsed. The power of this punch was peerlessly ferocious. Goldie harumphed coldly and waved his paw. With a forceful press, the sky and earth seemed to collapse, and a boundless torrent of destruction was produced. Battle Emperor Huntong's burly figure was smashed into pieces by the paw. His body exploded, and his soul was pulverized. He died on the spot. The bloody scene shocked everyone present. A fly dares to be so arrogant? You must be tired of living. Goldie spat disdainfully. Quick! The Juxing martial emperor, Battle Emperor Jingya, and the others wore solemn expressions. They didn't dare to hesitate any longer and immediately attacked. Kill! Treasure Light howled and Dao sound surged. The 7 martial emperors from the Demon Court and Panwu Court each took out their treasures and Dao arts and charged at Goldie. Everyone could see that Goldie was the greatest threat. In an instant, the sky and earth fell into chaos and collapse. Battles between martial emperors were never small fights. They could easily pluck the stars and the moon, destroy the heavens and earth, and possess world-shocking might. Amidst such attacks, Goldie's fur glowed and finally revealed the terrifying might of a martial ancestor. He was clearly a dog, but he seemed to be the ruler of a great Dao. Just the might he released was enough to suppress the entire battlefield, causing his opponents to hold their breaths and turn pale. Damn it, this old dog has reached the martial ancestor realm. We've been tricked. Run! Cries of shock and fear rang out continuously. Even an ant with the power of a martial ancestor was enough to make any martial emperor feel despair, let alone a dog. You want to leave? Have you gotten my permission? Goldie grunted coldly as he raised his claw and struck out horizontally. The glow of the Tao covered the heavens and the earth, and it was interweaved with the supreme might of the martial ancestor realm. Rumble. Martial emperors were slapped to death one after another like pieces of paper. Their bodies split into pieces, and they evaporated amidst the boundless glow of the Tao. In just a short moment, the ultimate martial emperor, Battle Emperor Clear Cliff, and the others were crushed successively amidst their terror. From the beginning until the end, Lin Sun had no room to interfere at all. When he wanted to make Goldie leave one alive, it was already a step too late. The dust and dirt dispersed. Goldie seemed to be dissatisfied, and he spat fiercely. All of you idiots are trying to take advantage of me. Dignified great emperors were extremely dazzling in the past. They were like supreme existences that were revered by countless living beings and possessed boundless divine might. But in the eyes of imperial ancestors like Goldie, they seemed so weak. Was it because they weren't strong enough? No, it wasn't. It was because Goldie was stronger than them. Let's go. Lin Sun didn't sigh with emotion. He turned around and flashed towards the flying immortal river. Goldie waved his claws and put away the spoils of war that were left on the battlefield before flying over as well. Only a mess and blood were left on the battlefield. The flying immortal river was vast and mighty as it descended from the sky. It was like the Milky Way descending from the 9 heavens. The river water was snow-white and dazzling, flickering with a divine luster. Rumor had it that the source of the flying immortal river came from a divine spring in the Kunlun ruins. The river water was clear and turbid, so it could flow in the void. If one wanted to enter the Kunlun ruins, one had to leap over the river, follow its flow, and trace its source. When he saw the familiar flying immortal river, Lin Sun couldn't help but recall the scene when he first came. At that time, he was only at the peak of the Saint stage, and he was accompanied by Ahu, Old Toad, Alu, and Little Silver. In the blink of an eye, many years had passed. When he came for the second time, he was already a peak great emperor, but Ahu and the others were missing. I wonder where they are now. A trace of uncertainty flashed through Lin Sun's eyes, and then he shook his head. A fleeting look could be seen in Lin Sun's eyes, but he soon shook his head. Together with Goldie, he soared into the sky and charged toward the void where the fairy river was. Chapter 24:18. Kunlun Ruins. The world was vast, and the void was filled with thick, chaotic chi. Between the mountains, rivers, grass, and trees, abundant and powerful vitality flowed. This place seemed to have been silent for thousands of years. It was uninhabited, and it exuded a primitive and desolate aura. Standing here was like returning to the beginning of chaos. The sky here was misty and high, suffused with a dark green color. There were stars moving in it, and streams of chaotic chi fell. On the ground, mountains rose and fell. It was vast and boundless. Standing here, one felt especially small. Whoosh, the vast wind surged between heaven and earth like a horn from ancient times. This place was like the residence of ancient gods. The power of the order of heaven and earth was abnormally strong and firm, and there was a kind of pressure from the great Tao. As soon as Lin Sun and Old Toad appeared, they felt a great pressure. They had no choice but to circulate their cultivation to resolve the pressure. Only an emperor stage can resolve such pressure. It seems that the opening of Kunlun ruins this time should be Emperor Shi Tiandi's doing. Big Yellow's eyes flickered. In the past, every time Kunlun ruins opened, it would produce pressure from the great Tao. However, there had never been such a terrifying pressure like now. Lin Sun spread out his divine consciousness and calmly sensed. Soon, he captured some residual auras that belonged to Emperor stage figures. Obviously, there were many Emperor realm cultivators who had arrived before them. Let's go. Lin Sun and Big Yellow did not delay and immediately followed the residual auras. Along the way, it was as if they were revisiting old places. The treasure refining ground, Inverted Mountain, Yulong Mountain. They were all areas that Lin Sun had conquered back then. Back then, he had defeated a group of opponents from the Starry Ancient Path here and made a name for himself on the Starry Ancient Path. Now that he had entered again, his state of mind was completely different. When they passed by the forbidden area of the pilgrimage platform, Lin Sun could not help but want to revisit it because it was on the pilgrimage platform that he had met his ninth senior brother, Gu Yupu, and the suppressed solitary sky demon emperor. It was also on the pilgrimage platform that he had obtained the inheritance left behind by the master of the heart core. This is the direction to the Tao Suppression Cliff. Big Yellow suddenly said. The Tao Suppression Cliff, along with the pilgrimage platform and the nameless forbidden area, was known as one of the 3 forbidden areas of Kunlun. Rumor had it that the Tao Suppression Cliff gathered the origin aura of the myriad Taos in the heavens, and it was extremely dangerous. Since ancient times, many people who wanted to reach the monarch ancestor realm would risk their lives to come here. The reason was that the aura of the grand Tao ancestral root could only be found on the Tao Suppression Precipice. Could it be that Master wanted to use the power of the Tao Suppression Cliff to suppress Shi Tiandi? Big Yellow's expression kept changing. At the same time, Lin Sun thought of many things in the past. On the Yulong Mountain, one of the 9 secrets, Lin Sun had seen a wisp of willpower left by the Great Way Lawless Bell. It was through the Lawless Bell that Lin Sun learned many secrets. For example, the rectangular bell and the Tao Refinement Source Furnace were born in the Kunlun ruins. The Tao Refinement Source Furnace was born on the Ascension platform, and the rectangular bell was born on the Tao Suppression Cliff. The rectangular bell had once relied on the power of the Dark Parasol Divine Tree with senior brotherly Xianwei to enter the ancient Desolation realm to train. Thus, the rectangular bell's aura still lingered on the ancient Desolation realm's Dark Parasol Mountain. According to the rectangular bell, at the beginning of the primeval times, a group of sages had once entered the Kunlun ruins. On the Tao Suppression Cliff, they'd gathered their lifetime's worth of effort in order to refine the number 1 divine weapon in the primeval times. But in the end, these sages had encountered danger and died. However, after being nurtured by the quintessence energy of the great Tao for countless years, the divine weapon that they had yet to refine had miraculously given birth to a divine weapon. This divine weapon was the Great Way Lawless Bell. Besides that, the owner of the Insignificance Bow, Tian Ke, had once fought enemies from all directions on the Tao Suppression Cliff. It was also when he left the Tao Suppression Cliff that he suffered a sneak attack from the Golden Crow Emperor. From all of these, It could be seen how dangerous and mysterious the Tao Suppression Cliff, one of the 3 forbidden areas of Kunlun, was. Since ancient times, countless major events that few people knew about had erupted there. Now, it was very likely that the Bronze Sparrow Pavilion's master and Shi Tiandi were fighting on the Tao Suppression Cliff. When he thought up to here, Lin Sun's heart tightened. He didn't dare dally and hurried with Big Yellow at full speed. The Tao Suppression Cliff was a restricted area. This expanse of the heavens and the earth was filled with a strange and terrifying shattered energy of order. It was like a sandstorm that swept through the heavens and the earth. Not to mention entering, ordinary experts would be instantly annihilated if they took a step closer. Even existences as formidable as Emperor Stage existences had to be careful and vigilant when heading to the Tao Suppression Cliff. Otherwise, they would definitely suffer a great calamity. Just think about it. Countless fragments of the law of order that had shattered like sand had transformed into a storm that raged. How terrifying was that level of power? Quickly take out the sword cauldron. When they arrived at this area, Big Yellow's expression became solemn. According to legend, the Tao Suppression Cliff suppressed the quintessence energy of all Taos in the world. Just by looking at this terrifying scene, one could tell that the legend was not exaggerated at all. The sword cauldron whizzed out, blooming with hundreds of millions of rays of light. The purple orderly phoenix flame flowed with crystal clear rays of light, dense and steaming. Rumble, almost at the same time, a storm of fragments of order swept over and was about to drown Lin Sun and Big Yellow. The sword cauldron glowed and opened a light curtain, isolating the storm of order. Although it still produced a great impact, it was still easily resolved by Lin Sun. This power of order is really a good treasure. Big Yellow sighed with emotion. He had coveted the orderly phoenix flame in the sword cauldron more than once. Unfortunately, such a divine object was too rare. Big Yellow led the way. Lin Sun controlled the sword cauldron and moved forward. After arriving at the Tao Suppression Cliff, the aura belonging to the Emperor Stage that he had been tracking along the way had completely disappeared, and his divine sense was also greatly hindered. That feeling was like a mortal encountering a sandstorm in the desert, and he couldn't even recognize the direction. This made Lin Sun's expression also grave. Fortunately, they had the sword cauldron. For an ordinary Emperor Stage character, walking in such a terrible and evil place was bound to be difficult. Their speed would be greatly hindered, and if they were not careful, they would be in trouble. Big Yellow led the way, and it walked cautiously. Along the way, all kinds of broken power of order were tumbling, like a raging and violent torrent, sweeping the world. That kind of power was enough to make any Emperor Stage tremble. Taoism Pier, help! Suddenly, from the area not far away, there was a hurried cry. Several divine rainbows rushed out of the torrent of order with difficulty, approaching Lin Sun and the others. And behind them, rolling fragments of order were tumbling like a raging sea, about to drown their figures. Which orthodoxy are you from? Big Yellow shouted. We are from the primitive Taoism court. Someone shouted from afar. This time we came under orders to help Emperor Shi Tiandi kill the enemy. I hope you can help us. Obviously, due to the serious obstruction of their divine sense, these Emperor Stage characters from the primitive Taoism court did not realize that there was something wrong with the identity of Lin Sun and Big Yellow. Then do you know where Emperor Shi Tiandi is now? Big Yellow asked again. From here, within 1,000 miles, you can see the Tao Suppressing Cliff, where Emperor Shi Tiandi is waiting. Speaking of this, the man seemed to realize something and said in surprise, Taoism Pier, didn't you get any guidance before coming here? While talking, these Emperor Stage characters of the primitive Taoism court had already approached and finally saw the appearance of Lin Sun and Big Yellow. They were all stunned and then immediately changed their expressions. You are... Big Yellow grinned. It's you. As he spoke, he raised his claws and swung them fiercely. Boom! The terrifying light of the way swept out, and these Emperor Stage characters of the primitive Taoism court immediately tried to resist. But how could they withstand the power of the Emperor Ancestor? In an instant, their figures were blasted out, and before they could stand firm, their bodies were engulfed by the torrent of order nearby. No, damn it, I won't let you go even if I die. As soon as the shrill screams sounded, they stopped abruptly. Their bodies were crushed by the fine power of order, and in an instant, they turned into ashes and smoke. This torrent of order is too terrifying. Big Yellow gasped. The power of order that filled this world was as fine as gravel, not complete, and was obviously formed by the convergence of different power of order. They were raging and violent, like the collapse of the power of the heavenly way sweeping through the world. Lin Sun took a deep breath, did not say much, and continued to move forward. Usually, a distance of 1,000 miles could be crossed in an instant with a single teleportation, but now it took a full 4 hours to walk in this fierce world. This was also with the orderly phoenix flame of the sword cauldron resisting and protecting. Otherwise, the time spent was bound to be very long. In the distance, a steep and majestic divine mountain as straight as a sword appeared between heaven and earth. This mountain was so high that it pierced deep into the clouds, and it was impossible to estimate. Torrents of order storms, like evil dragons, roared and galloped around the divine mountain, and it was a shocking sight. Lin Sun immediately sensed something and looked up. At the highest point of the divine mountain, he saw the dazzling power of order in the shape of a lotus. It was the law of order of Nirvana heaven. Over there, Lin Sun immediately guessed that second senior brother, Zhong Qiu, must be at the peak of the divine mountain. Be careful. At the same time, Big Yellow reminded them. When they followed its gaze, they saw several dazzling lights shining near the sacred mountain. There were several tens of them. Upon closer inspection, the dazzling Taoist lights were actually martial emperors. It went without saying that these martial emperors must have received orders from heavenly monarchshire to come as reinforcements. There were people from the 6 Tao courts, the 10 war clans, and the primordial imperial clans. These people were distributed in different areas, as if they were waiting for something. Not long after, from the highest point of the divine mountain, an indifferent voice filled with supreme majesty suddenly sounded. Continue. The dozens of martial emperors attacked together without hesitation. Some took out their martial emperor's weapons, and some used their dharma to attack the divine mountain that pierced through the clouds. It seemed like they were going to destroy the mountain. P.S. I actually dropped to the 21st place. Please give me a monthly ticket. Chapter 2419. An ordinary mountain would be reduced to ashes with a flick of an emperor's finger, even if it was covered in restrictive power. However, the majestic mountain before them, towering into the clouds, merely trembled violently after being bombarded by the emperors with all their might. Not even a single rock crumbled. Moreover, judging from the emperor's posture, it was obvious that they'd attacked it more than once. What are they doing? Lin Sun's eyes flashed. Whatever it is, it's definitely disadvantageous to master situation. Big Yellow's eyes glinted with murderous intent. A bunch of fools. You can't even destroy a mountain. Continue. The indifferent voice, filled with supreme majesty, resounded once more from the highest point of the mountain. These Emperor Realm experts were all from the starry heavens, and in their respective worlds, they could be said to be supreme existences. But now that they were being reprimanded and cursed like this, not a single one of them dared to retort, and they didn't even dare to get angry because of it. There was no doubt that there was only one person in this world who could do this. Emperor Shi Tiandi. Rumble, the divine mountain shook and the world shook. The dozens of emperors, regardless of their level of cultivation, unleashed all their might to attack the divine mountain. For a time, the light of the Tao was like a tide, and the monarch weapons were like rain. Lin Sun noticed that although the storm formed from the torrent of order was extremely terrifying, it couldn't approach the divine mountain. Because of this, the dozens of Emperor Realm experts could focus on attacking without worrying about their own safety. We can't wait any longer. Attack! Big Yellow charged forward and let out a deafening roar. Master, Big Yellow is here. His voice shook the heavens. Boom! Big Yellow charged forward and killed the emperor closest to him with a single swipe of his claw. His flesh and blood burst open and his soul scattered. His appearance caused the atmosphere to change abruptly. The pupils of the emperor shrank, as if they couldn't believe that there was someone in this world who dared to disrupt Emperor Shi Tianyi's plans. "It's Battle Emperor Shao!" Exclamations sounded as they recognized Big Yellow's identity. "A dog dares to come and ruin this seat's business? You're courting death." Suddenly, the sneer of Heavenly Emperor Shi Tianyi resounded from the highest point of the Divine Mountain. "Fine, all of you go and kill this dog first so as to avoid being an eyesore. F*CKU, I'm going to kill you later." Big Yellow's eyes reddened with killing intent, and it completely released the might of an emperor ancestor. While there were many martial emperors near the Divine Mountain, there were only 3 true progenitors. Upon seeing this, the 3 emperors pounced on Big Yellow right away. Even though Big Yellow was burning with anxiety, he was besieged by the 3 emperor ancestors for a while and couldn't break through the siege and rush up the Divine Mountain. This dog thing is actually already an emperor ancestor. This is truly unexpected. The other great emperors relaxed. Someone even teased, "I wonder how delicious it would be if we stew this Big Yellow dog into a pot of meat soup." His words caused many people to drool. If it was any other time, they wouldn't dare to slander and humiliate an emperor ancestor. Even if the emperor ancestor was a dog, they would still have to lower their heads and show respect. But now, they didn't care at all. That was because they could all tell that the large dog was already trapped and would suffer a calamity sooner or later. Puff! Suddenly, the emperor ancestor who teased about stewing meat soup was beheaded silently. Before he died, there was still a mocking smile on his face. Obviously, he was killed before he could react. Blood splashed, and the scarlet color was dazzling. This sudden scene made everyone stiffen, and their pupils constricted. What was going on? Puff! Another emperor ancestor's body was suddenly split in half, as if it was cut in half by a sharp blade. This strange scene made the emperor ancestors scalp numb. 2 of their companions died one after another, but there was no trace of the enemy, and they couldn't even see how they were killed. This was too terrifying. At this moment, Lin Sun's figure rushed out from the void, and the sword cauldron roared, sweeping up hundreds of millions of rays of light, rumbling through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. "Big Yellow!" Lin Sun roared. Big Yellow, who was besieged, didn't hesitate to gather all the strength in his body and waved a long bone stick to break through. It was also at this moment that the world seemed to be still. Forbidden death magic. Bang! The emperor ancestor who was about to resist was smashed into pieces by the stick. His flesh and blood burst open, and even his spirit was crushed into powder. Such a bloody scene caused screams to ring out from the surroundings. Lin Sun and Big Yellow had a tacit understanding. Lin Sun's figure flashed, and the 5 doppelgangers whizzed out, attacking the emperor ancestor near the sacred mountain. Big Yellow took advantage of the situation to attack the other 2 emperor ancestors, fierce and domineering. Rumble! The world shook, and the war broke out. At this moment, Shi Tianyi's surprised voice sounded from the highest point of the sacred mountain. The second stage of the devouring abyss. "It's you, Luo Qingxuan's little bastard." Obviously, Shi Tianyi had seen through Lin Sun's identity. Whether it was Lin Sun or Big Yellow, they turned a deaf ear to him and rushed forward with all their strength without holding back. Life and death with one sword. As Lin Sun's Dao sword slashed out, there seemed to be endless sword qi emerging, turning into the image of a Zhou Su world, and released. Puff! The 2 emperor ancestors who were targeted by him were instantly killed on the spot by the unparalleled sword qi. His body glowed, and his power was like that of a peerless demon. The sword cauldron rumbled, indestructible in defense and indestructible in attack. Anyone who was targeted by him was killed in the blink of an eye. The domineering momentum shocked the crowd. No one could have imagined that a 4th-level emperor ancestor could be so heaven-defying. At the same time, Lin Sun's 5 doppelgangers were also using their martial arts, and their power was not inferior to Big Yellow's. Those below the 6th level Emperor Ancestor were like decorations, and were easily killed. Those in the 7th level Emperor Ancestor could barely resist, but not for long. As for those in the 8th level Emperor Ancestor, they tried their best to stay alive, but as the battle went on, they were gradually injured and could not hold on any longer. For a time, dozens of emperors on the battlefield were defeated by Lin Sun alone. There were cries of anger and horror everywhere. In just a moment, more than half of the Emperor Ancestors had been killed. On Big Yellow's side, he had already suppressed the 2 Emperor Ancestors to the point where they could not lift their heads. They were riddled with injuries, but he still had the upper hand. Damn it! Sure, Tiandi could clearly sense that the situation was not optimistic, and he cursed in exasperation. In fact, he had already paid a great price to open the Kunlun ruins and gather the Emperor Ancestors of the various orthodoxies. However, he did not expect such a shocking change to happen before he could destroy the Divine Mountain. Right now, the situation could not be changed according to his will. Boom! Near the Divine Mountain, the massacre was like a frenzy. Lin Sun had completely shown an unstoppable momentum, causing a storm of blood. In the end, the remaining Emperor Ancestors broke down and chose to flee. They did not dare to go against Lin Sun at all, and they were panicking like dogs. Lin Sun did not stop them, nor did he chase after them. The most important thing now was to kill his way up the Divine Mountain and support second senior brother Zhongxiu. Of course, the first thing he had to do was deal with the 2 Emperor Ancestors. However, to Lin Sun's surprise, before he could get close, the 2 Emperor Ancestors who were already in a passive position and riddled with injuries actually fled as well. In fact, they realized that the situation was irreversible, and if they continued fighting, they would most likely suffer a calamity. That was why they chose to flee without hesitation. At the end of the day, they were only following orders. When their lives were threatened, the first thing they thought about was self-preservation, and it was impossible for them to truly risk their lives for sure Tiandi. Spineless, Big Yellow spat on the ground and rushed towards the sacred mountain with Lin Sun. Boom! As soon as they charged up, a terrifying and boundless power of order pressed down. The power caused Big Yellow to let out a muffled groan and was almost blasted away. Lin Sun made a prompt decision and withdrew the sword cauldron without hesitation. He relied on the power of the Order Phoenix flames to resist the terrifying pressure. However, the higher they went, the greater the pressure. Even if it was an Emperor Ancestor, they would not be able to withstand it without a treasure like the sword cauldron. You really dare to come and court death? Sure Tiandi's voice suddenly sounded, filled with coldness and indifference. Zhongxiu can't hold on any longer. When I break free, it will be the time of your death. T. Big Yellow cursed, his eyes red. You dog, if Zhongxiu is still alive, why hasn't he made a sound? Sure, Tiandi's voice was indifferent. Big Yellow's expression changed when he heard this. Yes, why hadn't his master made a sound until now? Ignore him. Let's kill our way up first. Lin Sun's eyes were cold. If he's really confident, why would this old thing be here talking nonsense with us? I'm afraid his situation isn't any better. Big Yellow took a deep breath and nodded his head. If Sure Tiandi was fine, there would be no need to talk nonsense, and there would be no need to ask those Emperor Realm experts to come and help. The reason why Sure Tiandi had not shown up until now was that his situation was not optimistic. As time passed, although the pressure was getting heavier, Lin Sun and Big Yellow rushed forward with all their might and gradually approached the peak of the Divine Mountain. The peak of the Divine Mountain was lonely and treacherous. There was only a foothold less than 30 meters in circumference, and other than that, there were only steep cliffs on all sides. Near the cliffs, there was a frenzied torrent of order, like thousands of black dragons dancing wildly, breathtaking. There was no doubt that if they fell from a mountain, they would be instantly swept away by the torrent of order and torn into powder. At the peak of the Divine Mountain, a tall figure sat cross-legged. In front of him floated the lotus-like energy of the Order of Nirvanic Freedom. However, his eyes were tightly shut, and his face was pale as if he had suffered a serious injury. The aura around his body was extremely chaotic, causing people to worry that he would go berserk and perish. Big Yellow was so agitated that it could not help but shout when it saw the tall figure, "Master!" This figure was the second successor of Fangtse Mountain, Zhongqiu. P.S. I suddenly added an update. Isn't it exciting? Seeking monthly votes. Chapter 2420. Zhongqiu's aura was disordered. He sat alone on the top of the mountain. He was obviously seriously injured, but he still exuded an oppressive aura. He was like the backbone of the heavens and earth, full of pride and arrogance. Lin Sun's heart tightened. What was going on? His eyes glanced around, but he did not see any trace of Shi Tiandi. Master! Seeing that Zhongqiu's eyes were closed and there was no response, Big Yellow became anxious. He was about to rush over, but was stopped by Lin Sun. Second senior brother is not in trouble yet. Don't mess around, Lin Sun said. Suddenly, he saw a bronze Dao bell standing on the other side of Zhongqiu. It was mottled with vicissitudes and was branded with obscure and mysterious Dao patterns. It was the Great Way Lawless Bell. Moreover, it was not the power of will, but the bell itself. Lin Sun remembered that this bell was born on the Dao Suppression Cliff. A long time ago, he and Li Xianwei had entered the ancient desolation realm together with the power of the divine dark parasol tree. The foundation of the lawless bell was even on par with the source furnace of treasure refining. The power of the source furnace of treasure refining. At this moment, the silent and motionless lawless bell seemed to have sensed something. It woke up from its silence and gave out an ethereal voice. At the same time, an ancient consciousness swept out and instantly captured the aura of Lin Sun and Big Yellow. So it's you, little friend. The lawless bell spoke with a hint of surprise. I didn't expect you to have integrated the 9 Emperor weapons of Kunlun into your natal Emperor weapon. It's really amazing. When Lin Sun first entered the secret realm of Mount Yulong in the Kunlun ruins, he had received guidance from the lawless bell's willpower. It was not surprising that it recognized him. Lin Sun was not in the mood to exchange pleasantries. He could not help but ask, "Senior, what's going on?" The lawless bell said in an ethereal voice, "A few years ago, your second senior brother came and arranged a battle with Shi Tiandi here. Although he suppressed Shi Tiandi under this mountain in the end, your second senior brother was also seriously injured." Lin Sun and Big Yellow's expressions changed. Only now did they know that Shi Tiandi was suppressed. No wonder so many Emperor Realm figures were summoned to attack this mountain. Obviously, this was the only way to let Shi Tiandi, who was suppressed under this mountain, escape. "How's my second senior brother now?" Lin Sun asked. He had to go all out in order to suppress Heavenly Emperor Shi. Therefore, he abandoned all distractions from the outside world and fused his body, mind, and Tao into the energy of order of the Nirvanic Freedom Heaven. Even so, it's impossible to kill Shi Tiandi in a short period of time. According to my deduction, if your second senior brother can guard this place for around 100 years, it should be more than enough time to eliminate this great enemy. 100 years. Both Lin Sun and Big Yellow were worried. It was also at this time that Shi Tiandi's indifferent voice sounded again. What a joke. With Zhongqiu's injuries, would he be able to last for 100 years? In my opinion, his injuries will be too severe in less than a year, causing his cultivation to collapse, and he'll perish completely. Big Yellow was enraged, and it was so furious that it roared, "Old fart, you're already being King suppressed, so why do you have so much nonsense to say? It's futile no matter how angry I am. I come from the Nirvana realm and possess the power of immortality. Even if I'm suppressed now, there will be a day when I can escape." After that, Shi Tiandi's voice fell into silence. No matter how Big Yellow cursed, his voice could not be heard again. Lin Sun asked, "Senior, can't second senior brother's injuries be cured?" "No," Big Yellow answered. "This is a Tao injury, so it can only be resolved by himself. Moreover, Outsiders can't intervene in this oppression. Lin Sun frowned. He didn't expect that this duel, which had attracted the attention of all the heavens in the starry sky, would turn into such a dangerous situation. In my opinion, Zhong Xiu has great perseverance and wisdom, so he won't be in trouble. Don't worry too much, my young friend, Big Yellow said. How can I not worry when he's already injured like this? Big Yellow was burning with anxiety. Lin Sun also felt it was very tricky. If they could kill Shi Tiandi in 100 years, it would naturally be the best result. But in this 100 years, second senior brother's injuries would break out and he would suffer from qi deviation. What should they do then? Is there no other way? Lin Sun asked. Just as Big Yellow was about to say something, a voice suddenly came from Zhong Xiu, who had been sitting there with his eyes closed. Junior brother, Shi Tiandi's injuries are more serious than mine. I'll definitely kill him in 100 years. You and Big Yellow don't have to worry. Zhong Xiu's voice was calm and indifferent, still as conceited and arrogant as before. Hearing this, Lin Sun and Big Yellow's eyes lit up. Senior brother, Lin Sun was about to say something, but Zhong Xiu's voice sounded again. Junior brother, let Big Yellow stay. You leave with Big Yellow and go to the core ruins of the ultimate. Find your fourth senior brother, and then kill him. These 4 words revealed a sense of determination. Lin Sun was shocked, and his mind was in turmoil. Among the 50 successors of Mount Heart and Heart, first senior brother Dojan Di, third senior sister Roosu, fifth senior brother Qi Jun, eighth senior brother Bo Swansea, 11th senior brother Pu Jun, and so on, had already crossed the void and gone to the other side of the starry sky after killing the nameless emperor. As for 9th senior brother Giu Pu, 14th senior brother Ji Xiu, and so on, they had all passed away. Lin Sun had been curious about who the 4th senior brother was among the top 5 senior brothers and sisters. But over the years, no matter which senior brother or sister he met, they never talked about anything related to this person. Even when Lin Sun asked about it, he didn't get any answer. But now, second senior brother Zhong Xiu told him to kill 4th senior brother. This was really shocking. Why was that? I'll let Big Yellow tell you about this after you leave. Zhong Xiu's voice sounded again. Anyway, Master didn't kill him back then because he wanted him to repent and remember his mistakes so that he could rebuild his Taoist heart. But now it seems that he has become paranoid and must be eliminated. There is a sense of loss and determination in his voice. At this point, Zhong Xiu's voice also fell silent. No matter how Lin Sun and Big Yellow tried to communicate with him, it was in vain. Lin Sun, you leave with Big Yellow. I'll keep watch here. Big Yellow made a decision. As he spoke, he rushed to the top of the mountain and stood in front of Zhong Xiu. Little friend, let's go. Big Yellow floated in the air, sprinkling mottled light and shadow. Lin Sun was stunned for a moment. He sighed softly and nodded, saying, I'll be back. Wait a moment, she suddenly said, and walked out of the heaven-accessing place. Back then, he saved me once. This time, I'll stay and protect him. Lin Sun was stunned and then nodded. Okay. When she entered the dark world for the first time, he fought with Yin Xing, the purple-haired woman, and was seriously injured. It was second senior brother who saved her. Now, she had chosen to stay. Obviously, he wanted to repay second senior brother's kindness. Moreover, with him and Big Yellow together, Lin Sun felt more at ease. Little bastard, you'd better pray that you don't die too early. Why get out? I'll capture you immediately. Suddenly, Shi Tiandi's voice sounded, full of bone-chilling coldness. Lin Sun ignored him and went down the mountain with Big Yellow. Walking down the divine mountain, with Big Yellow leading the way, the raging torrent of order could no longer affect Lin Sun. Halfway down the divine mountain, Lin Sun could not help but turn around and look at the peak of the divine mountain. He could vaguely see the figures of Shi, Big Yellow, and second senior brother Zhong Xiu. What's the name of this mountain? Lin Sun asked. Tao Suppression. Big Yellow's voice was ethereal. The place where Zhong Xiu is sitting cross-legged is the Tao Suppression Cliff. Look at the torrent of order in this world. It's gathering the origin aura of countless great Tao. Once it's leaked, the entire Kunlun ruins will probably be destroyed. Lin Sun nodded and said, Senior, can you tell me about fourth senior brother now? Big Yellow fell silent for a moment and said, Your fourth senior brother's Taoist name is Ling Xuanzi. He's a genius with the most wisdom among the descendants of Mount Inner Heart. Ling Xuanzi. He was born with wisdom and had 9 orifices in his heart. His spiritual sea was like a lotus. His talent was extraordinary and rare. When he was young, he became the disciple of the Master of the Heart. When he was 9 years old, he had already seen through the essence of the Saint realm and made a great vow. All the laws in the world can't escape my eyes. All the Taoists in the world should be controlled by me. All living beings in the world. Seeing me is like seeing the heavens. 9 years old, he had crossed the shackles of the lower 5 realms and broken through the 9 tribulations of longevity to enter the Saint realm. This kind of cultivation speed could be said to be shocking and unprecedented. What was even more shocking was the great vow Ling Xuanzi made. Seeing me is like seeing the heavens. 10 years later, Ling Xuanzi found a master of the heart and said, Master, from today onwards, I can enter the great emperor realm. Can it be said that the pupil has surpassed the master? In other words, the attainments of the great Tao that the master mastered when he broke through the great emperor realm back then were inferior to him. The master of the heart did not say a word and only let out a long sigh. As expected, on that day, Ling Xuanzi welcomed the great emperor tribulation and became a great emperor in one go. This matter caused a stir in Mount Fengsuan. The other descendants were all shocked and thought that Ling Xuanzi's talent could be said to be the best in the world. In the future, his achievements were destined to surpass them. However, not long after Ling Xuanzi became a great emperor, he encountered a calamity in his cultivation. In the deepest part of his Tao heart, there was a demon in his heart that erupted and he walked on the path of evil. At that time, Ling Xuanzi took advantage of the fact that the master of the heart was away to declare war on his fellow disciples. He wanted to determine the winner through a Tao discussion. If he lost, he would have to swear on his Tao heart to serve Ling Xuanzi as his master. If he won, he would destroy his own great Tao. This action was opposed by the descendants of Mount Fengsuan. They felt that Ling Xuanzi's action was too extreme and deviated from the Tao. Therefore, no one participated in the Tao discussion. However, Ling Xuanzi did not stop just like that. He took the initiative to fight and defeated over 10 senior and junior brothers in succession before imprisoning them. He said that he would make them willingly swear an oath to serve him as their master within 3 days. This action completely infuriated the other descendants of the heart, and they decided to capture Ling Xuanzi together. However, before this internal battle could erupt, Ling Xuanzi was suppressed by the master of the heart who had returned to the sect with a single hand. Chapter 24-21. He had been suppressed for countless years. Even though the heart gate had collapsed, Ling Xuanzi was still suppressed under the heart ruins. The heart master had once said, when Ling Xuanzi repents and dispels his inner demons and reconstructs his Tao heart, the seal will naturally be undone. The seal had yet to be broken, which obviously proved that Ling Xuanzi's inner demons had not been completely expelled. Hearing this, Lin Sun could not help but sigh. He became a saint at the age of 9 and a peak great emperor 10 years later. One could imagine how heaven-defying and terrifying this fourth senior brother's aptitude was. Compared to him, the so-called geniuses and geniuses in this world were simply not worth mentioning. Even Lin Sun himself, who is known as the first peak great emperor in 100,000 years, was far inferior to this fourth senior brother in terms of cultivation advancement. Lin Sun asked, Senior, do you know what exactly my fourth senior brother's inner demons are? Seeing me is like seeing the heavens, said the restless bell. That was Ling Xuanzi's sage Tao grand wish. However, it had also become his inner demon. Lin Sun's black eyes flickered as he recalled the sage Tao grand wish he had made back then. He finally understood why those senior brothers and sisters were unwilling to mention fourth senior brother's name. The restless bell continued. It's not a good thing to cultivate too quickly, especially for a heaven-defying genius like Ling Xuanzi. He advances at a tremendous speed on the path of Tao. But once he takes the wrong path, the consequences are simply unimaginable. Lin Sun said, "He's been suppressed for so long, so why did second senior brother give the order to kill fourth senior brother?" A few years ago, Shi Tiandi went to the ultimate ruins to explore the heart ruins. In the end, although Shi Tiandi escaped from the ultimate ruins, he suffered serious injuries. Lin Sun could not help but nod to himself when the restless bell said this. He also remembered this past. It was precisely because of this opportunity that Zhong Xiu made a move and chose to fight Shi Tiandi to the death in the Kunlun ruins. According to Zhong Xiu's plan, the Dao suppression cliff suppresses the origin of all Daos in the world. It can imperceptibly counteract and resist the power of the Forbidden Order. In this way, killing the injured Shi Tiandi should be as easy as flipping his hand. However, an accident happened during the battle. The lawless bell paused for a moment and sighed. During the battle, Shi Tiandi had a thorough understanding of the great Dao energy and Dao techniques that Zhong Xiu had mastered. It was as if he had seen through every single detail of Zhong Xiu, causing Zhong Xiu to suffer many dangerous situations. It was also at that time that Zhong Xiu realized that Emperor Shi Tiandi had probably mastered the imperial scripture of the Grand Dao, the true self and supremacy technique that he had personally created. In this world, only Ling Xuanzi, who was suppressed in the core ruins, possesses such an inheritance. Lin Sun's pupils contracted. Ling Xuanzi taught it to Shi Tiandi. Lin Zhongtian. Back then, Ling Xuanzi read through all the Taoist scriptures on Mount Fangsuan, and he possessed many inheritances. For example, the inheritances created by the battle emperor, Zhongqiu, Ruosu, and others were all given to Ling Xuanzi to comprehend and study. It's undeniable that Ling Xuanzi is a peerless genius from ancient times to the present. He can almost easily comprehend the Tao, and Tao he wants a master. But it's also because he leaked Zhongqiu's inheritance to Shi Tian Emperor that Zhongqiu's plan was almost disrupted. Although Shi Tian Emperor was suppressed in the end, he also paid a heavy price for it. Hearing this, Lin Sun's eyes were full of cold light. If so, what's the difference between my fourth senior brother and a traitor? No wonder second senior brother wants to kill him. If such a disaster is not eliminated, the Tao of Tiandi's sect will be affected. This can only prove that he has been resentful and paranoid in the countless years he has been suppressed. That's why he did such a thing. The restless bell sighed again and said, "It's really a pity. A cultivation genius that was difficult to come by throughout the ages should have possessed an unimaginably bright future, yet a devil had appeared in his heart and taken the wrong path. How could others not feel pity for him? No matter how great his talent and foundation are, if his heart is not in the right place, it will be a disaster. It's not a pity. If I were his master, I would have abolished him," Lin Sun said calmly. As they talked, they had already walked out of the forbidden area of the Tao-suppressing cliff. The restless bell suddenly turned into the size of a little finger and fell on Lin's hair like a pendant, saying, "Young friend, I have a deep relationship with your Mount Fangsuan's orthodoxy, which is why I helped your senior brother previously. I will also guide you on the way to the sinkhole, but if you encounter any killing, I'm sorry I can't help you." Lin Sun was stunned and said, "Of course. I should solve the affairs between the descendants of Mountain Cun by myself. Thank you for your understanding." The restless bell seemed very peaceful. "In the past countless years, I have accompanied your senior brother Li Xianwei to the ancient Desolation territory and had the honor to meet the master of Tiandi's sect and get his guidance. But I have never killed a living creature. Not even one." Lin Sun was surprised. "Not even one." The restless bell's voice was ethereal. "The sound of the bell is all living beings. I know that all living beings are suffering and can't bear to kill again. I can't control the killing intent of people in the world, but at least I can control myself not to kill. Your senior brother Li Xianwei once said that my great way is too stubborn and stupid. It's fake mercy. The real mercy should be to teach all living beings and then to free them from the suffering of the ups and downs of the world. But this is not my great way. My bell is to let all living beings have the time to be enlightened. That's enough. After listening, Lin Sun thought for a while and said, "Our paths are different. It's not stubbornness and stupidity. I think you can achieve what you have today because you are persistent." After a pause, he asked, "Senior, how should we go to the ultimate ruins?" The ultimate ruins is the place where all the streams in the world converge. It is the source of the flying fairy river in Kunlun ruins. There is a space-time tunnel that can lead to the ultimate ruins. The restless bell said. Lin Sun thought for a while and started to act according to the guidance of the restless bell. Originally, he planned to go to the Peach Garden's secret realm, Mount Yulong's secret realm, and the pilgrimage platform Forbidden Area again. But after thinking about it, he gave up. Swish! Lin Sun's figure flickered and began to move forward. The Kunlun ruins was so big that even the restless bell couldn't tell how big it was. There were not only 3 forbidden and 9 secret places here, but also many other strange and unbelievable places. The Kunlun ruins was regarded as the ancestral court of the Great Way. Since ancient times, there have been rumors that the ancestral origin aura of all the Daos in the world could be found in the Kunlun ruins. Unfortunately, Lin Sun was not in the mood to explore them one by one. In fact, with his current cultivation realm, except for some of the rarest treasures in the world, ordinary small opportunities and small fortunes had long been ignored by him. For hours later, under the guidance of the restless bell, Lin Sun arrived at a place where the sky and earth collapsed. The sky here had collapsed into one giant black hole after another. It was strangely still, but it was still enough to make one shudder. On the ground, there were deep ravines and abysses everywhere, densely packed and continuous. At the end of this strange world was a vast expanse of black nothingness. According to the restless bell, the black void was one of the 3 forbidden areas of Kunlun, the nameless forbidden area. From ancient times until now, almost no one who entered it could return alive from the great perilous land of death. Lin Sun stood in the void and looked at the scene of the sky and earth collapsing. Then, he looked at the dark, nameless, forbidden area in the distance and could not help but feel awe. Even though he was a great emperor, when he arrived in this area, it made his hair stand on end and his heart palpitate uneasily. "Senior, do you know what's hidden in the nameless forbidden area?" Lin Sun asked. The restless bell said, "I heard that it's a broken path. It breaks the sky, the earth, the Great Way, and everything. There are also rumors that the nameless forbidden area is the origin of chaos born in the Kunlun ruins. As for what's hidden in it, I don't know either." After a pause, he said, "However, I heard that your master, the master of the square inch, seems to have explored the nameless forbidden area." Lin Sun was stunned and did not say anything more. Under the guidance of the restless bell, he soon found an incomparably huge ravine. In the deepest part of the ravine, light danced and the river surged, shining with dreamy, divine brilliance. "The end of the fairy river is here," said the restless bell. "It's a spring that blends with the mysterious power of time and space. If you enter from a spring, you can teleport to the ultimate ruins." Lin Sun nodded. Without hesitation, he flashed into the bottom of the ravine. The river surged, creating rolling waves, and the misty, illusory luster flickered, appearing very mysterious. In just a moment, Lin Sun noticed the spring. It covered an area of 9 meters, like a crack in the deepest part of the earth, and the water of the fairy river flowed out from it. Looking closely, the spring emitted a misty aura of time, and the order of space interweaved, converging into the mysterious power of time and space. Without the guidance of the restless bell, Lin Sun dared not imagine that the source of the fairy river was such a wonderful scene. "Don't worry, my young friend. The power of time and space is extremely strong. When you enter it, you will not be hurt," said the restless bell. Lin Sun nodded and did not hesitate anymore. He got up and rushed into it. Splash, the river splashed. When the dreamlike power of time and space touched Lin Sun, A strange feeling like an electric shock surged all over his body. Almost at the same time, the origin spirit vein in his chest suddenly released an extremely scorching aura, like an ancient fierce beast that was awakened from its slumber. It was completely out of control. The spiritual vein seemed to have been starved for countless years. It released a terrible white light, turned into the shape of a big abyss, and swallowed the power of time and space. Boom! Near the spring, there was an earth-shattering roar, and the originally stable power of time and space was violently shaken. That scene shocked even Wu Zhuzhong. He immediately said, "Let's go." At this moment, Lin Sun only felt that his body was hot, and his body was in turmoil. The violent power of time and space rushed into the spiritual vein like a raging torrent, making him dizzy and dizzy. When he heard the voice of the rustless bell, Lin Sun rushed to the spring almost instinctively. P.S. Asking for monthly votes. Besides, the Chinese New Year was coming at the end of the month, and the goldfish was worried about how to keep updating. Chapter 24-22. Boom! The entrance of a spring seemed to turn into a storm whirlpool, splashing wild space-time turbulence. Lin Sun's figure disappeared into the depths of the spring earlier, so he avoided the disaster. Otherwise, if he was swept by the space-time turbulence, he would be torn into pieces in an instant. After a while, the spring returned to peace, but compared with the past, the space-time power lingering nearby was obviously weaker. The stars moved, and the world was spinning. Lin Sun only felt that his whole body was boiling hot, and he was uncontrollably moved, with distorted and colorful light and shadow in front of him. Nobody knew how long it had been. Lin Sun's body gradually calmed down, and his drowsy consciousness also became clear little by little. As soon as he thought of it, he immediately noticed that the spiritual vein was crystallized, crystal clear, and there was an unparalleled power of time surging in it. That feeling was like a transparent bottle filled with flowing water. Even Lin Sun had a feeling that the starving spiritual vein finally had a full meal. However, there was no transformation, but it seemed that it would transform at any time. Lin Sun immediately realized that kind of wonderful feeling. Perhaps when the spiritual vein completely refined the power of time it had swallowed, there would be a third transformation. That was the so-called third stage of the power of devouring abyss. However, it was still too dangerous at that time. A little mistake might. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a lingering fear when he thought of the scene of space-time disorder around the spring. "How do you feel now, my young friend?" The voice of Wu Ju Bell sounded with concern. "I'm fine now." Lin Sun took a deep breath, looked around, and found that he had come to a whirlpool portal. Outside this portal is the entrance to the ultimate, Wu Ju Bell said. However, you should be mentally prepared. Outside the ultimate is the soul oblivion sea. Under the oppression of the Great Way, your cultivation will be suppressed below the Emperor realm. However, as long as you enter the ultimate, your cultivation will be restored. Lin Sun nodded. The soul oblivion sea. It was connected to the deepest part of the East Sea of Xiao Empire, which was counted as the lower world. A long time ago, when the old priest and the old priest were dormant in the forbidden city of Xiao Empire, their power was also suppressed. Otherwise, with their cultivation, they could easily pierce through the heavens. As far as Lin knew, after the Taoist War broke out in primitive times, the ancient desolation, the origin of all Tao, was sunk, and its original power was lost and turned into the inferior world. In other words, the lower realms were formed from the core of the land of origin. For example, the ruins of End, the soul oblivion ocean, the Tao burial sea, the bloodthirsty battlefield. All these extremely mysterious places were located in the lower dimensions. How could Lin Sun not understand that the mortal world was by no means a barren and abandoned land, but had a great history? When he thought about how he was still in the Kunlun ruins earlier, and how long had it been since he returned to the Soul Oblivion Ocean, Lin Sun could not help but be in a daze. It had been decades since he entered the starry sky ancient path. Even Lin Sun did not expect that he would have the opportunity to return to the mortal world under such circumstances. Without delay, Lin Sun rushed into the vortex portal. A vast blue sea immediately appeared in his field of vision. As far as the eye could see, the sky was high and the clouds were light. The blue waves were vast and boundless. However, at the same time, Lin Sun also sensed the appearance of a law from the great Tao. It suppressed his aura until it fell below the Emperor realm, and only stabilized when it reached the perfection of the quasi-Emperor realm. At the same time, the pressure of the great Tao law disappeared. The order law of this world is definitely not simple. Lin Sun stood on the blue sea with his hands behind his back and sighed with emotion. Back then, he was young and his cultivation was shallow, so he could not understand the wonders of this world. Now that he had returned, he was already the Dao Yuan Emperor who shocked the heavens of the starry sky. Only then did he understand how different the mortal world was. The rustless bell said, "The starry sky ancient path is vast and includes all the worlds in the world. However, there's only one starry sky ancient path that leads to the Kunlun ruins. And this mortal world is equivalent to the ruins of End, so is naturally extraordinary." Lin Sun looked around, and the memories of his youth surfaced in his mind bit by bit. He still remembered that he had been invited by Zhao Jingxian to set off from the Xiao Empire with a group of descendants of the numinous treasure Holy Land. They crossed the Soul Oblivion Sea and arrived at the ruins of End safely. It was also in the Dao Burial Sea Tomb that he met the three-legged Golden Toad's descendant, Old Toad Jin Di. Later on, he and the Old Toad broke into the Demon Saint's secret realm and fought with the Dragon Whale clan, the Golden Phoenix clan, the Herculean Demon Ox clan, the Mysterious Turtle clan, the Cloud Monkey clan, the Feather Spirit clan, and so on. He encountered danger repeatedly and obtained fortuitous opportunities repeatedly. When he entered the core ruins, he used the Tower of Endless to obtain the teaching Tao hymn left behind by the master of the core ruins. It was also at that time that he was able to obtain the inheritance of First Senior Brother, the Battle Saint technique, amidst the fierce competition between his opponents. Thinking back to the past, Lin Sun could not help but feel a little adrift. Young, unknowingly, more than 100 years had passed in the blink of an eye, and he was no longer young. When I'm done with Fourth Senior Brother, I must return to the Xiao Empire to take a look. Lin Sun secretly made a decision. Suddenly, a noisy voice sounded from afar. "Don't panic, everyone. The entrance to the ultimate has been appearing for more than a month. According to the Tao Master, all living beings in the world will have the opportunity to enter the core ruins within 3 months and listen to the Tao Master expound the mystery of the great Tao. How can there be such a good thing in the world? This is called good fortune. Let's go." Above the blue sea in the distance, many figures appeared. Some were riding spiritual birds, some were sitting on the back of huge sea sharks, and some were flying on treasures. There were more than 100 of them, including men and women. It was quite a spectacular scene. The leader was a sage-like old man in a black robe. He stepped on an ancient sword, and his sleeves fluttered in the wind. He looked very natural and unrestrained. Lin Sun glanced over and immediately recognized the origin of these figures. In this sea area lived the survivors of the 10,000 primitive clans. They formed their own forces and survived to this day. When Lin Sun came here for the first time, when he was young, he had witnessed the power of these survivors of the 10,000 primitive clans, such as Niu Tunshin of the Herculean Ox clan, Kong Xiu of the Cloud Stripe clan, Meng Lianxing of the Golden Phoenix clan, and so on. The figures whizzing over in the distance were obviously from the forces of the 10,000 primitive clans. They belonged to different clans and looked strange. When they saw Lin Sun standing alone on the blue sea, the black-robed old man and others were stunned, but they didn't feel too strange. During this period, the sea area near the ultimate was unprecedentedly lively, attracting countless strong practitioners every day. No one was willing to waste time after just taking a glance at Lin Sun. The black-robed old man and others left directly. Suddenly, a slender figure stopped and looked at Lin Sun with a pair of eyes, revealing a startled expression. This was a woman that wore a light golden dress. Her figure was extremely tall. Her appearance was peerlessly beautiful. Her skin was jade white like snow. Her jet black and beautiful hair hung down to her slender waist, and her entire body emanated a breathtaking, proud, and icy cold aura. As she stopped, some of the people around her stopped as well. They crowded around her and asked her questions with puzzlement in their eyes. Miss Lianqing knows this person? They were also looking at Lin Sun. At the same time, Lin Sun couldn't help but be a little startled as he recognized the beautiful woman's identity. Meng Lianqing. Back in the Demon Saint's secret realm, Meng Lianqing was incomparably dazzling among the saints, like a goddess with peerless charm. However, Lin Sun and she were rivals, and in order to compete for the battle saint technique, they even had an extremely fierce conflict. At that time, Lin Sun fought against many and successively suppressed Niu Tunshin, Xian Luozi, Graceful Kong, and other saints. After knowing that she was no match for him, Meng Lianqing chose to retreat. However, Lin Sun didn't expect to meet such an old friend as soon as he returned to the sea area near the ultimate. Lin Sun didn't know that after so many years, Meng Lianqing had already become an outstanding and dazzling figure among the 10,000 primitive clans. She was the first among the younger generation of the Golden Phoenix clan to reach the Quasi-Emperor realm. Her status was so high that she could stand shoulder to shoulder with those old monsters who had lived for tens of thousands of years. Over the years, among the 10,000 primitive clans, Meng Lianqing had become an existence that no major force could ignore. Coupled with her stunning appearance, she could be said to be a crane in a flock of chickens, and was regarded as a fairy by many young men. In fact, the young men with different expressions nearby were Meng Lianqing's admirers. They either had an extremely extraordinary background or had outstanding attainments in the Great Way. But at this moment, Meng Lianqing sometimes frowned, sometimes in a trance, and her clear eyes were also fluctuating, as if she was recalling the past. After a while, with a trace of doubt, she said, She came to the ultimate today, intending to listen to the town master explain the mystery of the Great Way, but she didn't expect to see a familiar figure, which reminded her of the experience when she first entered the Demon Saint's secret realm many years ago. That experience was like a nightmare. Although it had already passed for many years, every time she thought of it, she still felt a kind of unwillingness and bitterness. "What's the matter?" Lin Sun asked. He didn't intend to reveal his identity. The dispute in the past, in his eyes now, was completely like a small quarrel, not worth mentioning. But now, although his strength was suppressed, both his appearance and appearance had a qualitative transformation from when he was young. If he didn't want to be recognized, even great emperors who were familiar with him wouldn't be able to do so. In the face of Lin Sun's clear and calm eyes, Meng Lianqing was a little hesitant and said, "I'm sorry, you look like an old friend of mine. I must have mistaken you for someone else. But, may I know your name?" "Dao Yuan," Lin Sun casually said his Taoist name. "Dao Yuan?" Sure enough, it's not him. Meng Lianqing was startled, as if relieved of a heavy burden, but also a little disappointed, her clear eyes enshrouded with subtle, complex emotions. Chapter 24-23. Although the aura of this man, called Dao Yuan, was somewhat similar to that of the person in her memory, there was a clear difference. That person was arrogant and domineering. Although he was young, he was like the sun shining alone and had a heaven-defying, killing power that could sweep through the crowd. Even when surrounded by a group of chosen, he was full of courage and acted as though no one was around. His entire person was like a peerless divine saber that could tear the sky apart and shine brightly. Back then in the demonic Saint Mystic realm, no one could compare to him and killed until everyone was terrified. But the Dao Yuan before her did not have that kind of style. He was too ordinary, like a cloud that could be seen at any time in the sky, without any edges or edges. Meng Lianqing also could not explain why she felt disappointed. Her emotions were subtle and complicated. According to common sense, she should have hated and rejected that youth from back then, but many years had passed and circumstances had changed. When she reached the quasi-emperor realm, she suddenly realized that the battles and killings back then were already a thing of the past. Only her heart still felt regret and unwillingness. Sorry for disturbing you. Meng Lianqing calmed herself down and looked away, her clothes fluttering in the wind. Those young talents hurriedly chased after her. If not for Meng Lianqing, they would not even bother to look at a stranger like Lin Sun. Lin Sun was unperturbed by this. He thought about how he had killed so many great emperors in the starry sky over the years, and how he had killed so many ancient orthodoxies that stood at the peak of the world. His power had long suppressed the starry sky and made people tremble in fear. Now that he was facing these people whose cultivation was only at the quasi-emperor realm, whether it was his state of mind or his knowledge, he looked down on them. Shaking his head, Lin Sun was about to head to the ultimate when a figure suddenly flew over from afar and greeted Lin Sun with a smile. Brother Dao Yuan, are you also going to the ultimate to listen to Lord Dao Master expound on the mysteries of the great Dao? As he spoke, he introduced himself. I am Yin Wan of the Spirit Leaf clan. The Spirit Leaf clan was only a second-rate clan among the remnant forces of the 10,000 primordial races. Although Yin Wan was a chosen of a younger generation, his cultivation was only at the great saint level. That's right. Lin Sun sized up Yin Wan and looked away. Does Brother Dao Yuan know Fairy Meng Lianqing? Yin Wan's eyes were filled with envy and even excitement. She's one of the most dazzling beauties in the Soul Oblivion Ocean. It's hard for an ordinary clan leader to even meet Fairy Meng. She mistook me for someone else. Lin Sun shook his head with a smile. He finally understood that this guy took the initiative to talk to him because of Meng Lianqing. Mistook me for someone else? Why didn't you mistake me? Yin Wan had a look of disbelief on her face. Furthermore, Fairy Meng is a quasi-emperor. Her eyes are as sharp as torches. Even if she mistook you for someone else, there must be another reason. In my opinion, brother, you might be in luck. Lucky? Lin Sun was stunned. Yin Wan said, Brother, are you really muddle-headed or just pretending to be muddle-headed? That's Fairy Meng we're talking about. As long as you're in her good graces, with just a few pointers, your luck will change for the better, and you'll be able to turn over a new leaf. His eyes and words were filled with envy. Lin Sun couldn't help but find it funny. He could see that Meng Lianqing was a goddess in this guy's heart, full of admiration and admiration. He didn't say anything more and flashed into the distance. Brother, wait a moment. Yin Wan caught up with him. He seemed to be very familiar with Lin Sun. Anyway, we're going to the ultimate. Let's go together. It'll be good to keep each other company. Lin Sun didn't reject it. He also happened to have a lot of questions to ask. Can you tell me about the deeds of that town master? He asked. Although Yin Wan was a little confused, he happily told Lin Sun everything he knew. More than a month ago, the entrance to the ultimate appeared on the blue sea, causing a great sensation. Many cultivators entered it. But not only did they not encounter any danger, but they also heard the voice of a mysterious expert explaining the mysteries of the Great Way in front of the core ruins in the secret realm of demon saints. That mysterious expert called himself Tao Master and claimed to know the mysteries of all Tao in the heavens. The reason why he explained the mysteries of the Great Way was that he would soon prove his Tao and leave. He didn't want his cultivation to be buried, so he planned to find a successor. Anyone who went to listen to his preaching would have the opportunity to be accepted as his successor and inherit his mantle. In the beginning, everyone was doubtful, but as they listened to the Tao Master explain the mysteries of the Grand Tao, no matter who it was, all of them obtained great gains. Some experts even directly broke through while listening to the Grand Tao. Thus, it spread like wildfire, and in less than a month, all the survivors of the primeval race that resided in the depths of the Soul Oblivion Sea found out about it, and it caused a great stir. In the recent period of time, countless cultivators had swarmed over here, and it caused the ruins of End to become extremely bustling. As time passed, there were more and more rumors about this Lord Dao Master. Rumor has it that he was an ancient emperor that possessed the power to cover the heavens and earth. His cultivation was so profound that it could shake the ages. There were also rumors that said the town master was the owner of the core ruins, and he was a supreme existence that could roam proudly through the universe and shake the heavens since the primeval times. As she finished speaking, Yin Wan's expression was covered in fervor and adoration. She said, "I didn't come here with the hope of becoming the town master's personal disciple, but it's enough so long as I can listen to his teachings." He didn't notice at all that a wisp of imperceptible coldness had suffused Lin Sun's expression at this moment. What town master? Lin Sun had a strong premonition that this fellow was probably his fourth senior brother, Ling Xuanzi. As for choosing a successor, it was complete nonsense. After all, Ling Xuanzi was still suppressed beneath the core ruins, so how could he have the mood to choose a disciple? He caused such a great commotion and attracted countless living beings to listen to his teachings. If this town master is really fourth senior brother, then what's his objective for doing all this? Lin Sun's eyes searched. No matter what, I must eliminate this disaster that betrayed the sect this time. As they spoke, the rumbling of water resounded from afar, and it shook the heavens and the earth like a thunderclap. A large abyss had appeared above the blue sea in the distance. The abyss in the sea, as far as the eye could see, the seawater from all directions surged into the depths of the abyss like a myriad of streams returning to the source, and it caused terrifying rumbling sounds. That scene was exceptionally grand. A great abyss appeared in the middle of the ocean, devouring the seawater in all directions. It was immeasurably deep, as if it was the entrance to a mysterious world. Compared to this abyss, even the sun and moon seemed tiny, whereas the treasured vessel was like a grain of sand when it approached it, and it seemed even more inconspicuous. This was Ruin's End. According to legend, every single river in the myriad of worlds, and even the water of the Milky Way in the depths of the universe would converge within the mysterious and primitive ruins of End. It was said that at the beginning, Chunguishi was surrounded by 5 divine mountains, namely Yingzhou, Penglai, Fenghu, Daiyu, and Yuanjiao. Every divine mountain was 30,000 li in diameter, and the distance between the mountains was 70,000 zhang. The top of the mountain was connected to the Sea of Stars, and the bottom was connected to the 9 underworlds. "We're here," Yinwan said excitedly. Lin Sun's eyes were filled with emotions. When he first came to the sinkhole, he was still a youth. Now, he was completely different. The flowers were the same every year, but the people were different every year. In the sea, near the sinkhole, there were already many figures rushing over. There were hundreds and thousands of them, and all of them were filled with anticipation and excitement. They formed dazzling divine rainbows and rushed in. Lin Sun saw the experts of the Dragon Whale clan, Shinao clan, Yinho clan, Limu clan, Bloodline clan, and other familiar clans. However, almost all of them were unfamiliar faces. Without any delay, Lin Sun set out as well, and Yin Wan followed closely behind him. The conversations they had all along the way caused him to feel that this friend called Dao Yuan was really not bad. Dao Yuan was warm-hearted and warm. It made him feel as if he was bathing in the spring breeze and felt like a bosom friend. He did not know that if the great emperors in the starry sky knew of this evaluation, they would be dumbfounded. That Dao Yuan emperor, whose hands were stained with the blood of the great emperors, was warm, very warm. What a joke. The ruins of End was one of the 4 great Dao ruins. Rumor had it that it included many secret realms and mysterious forbidden areas. Just like the Kunlun ruins, no one knew how big the ruins of End was since ancient times. The Demon Saint's secret realm was just one of them. Of course, the Demon Saint's secret realm was just what the outside world called it. Now, Lin Sun already knew that the Demon Saint's secret realm should be called the secret realm of Fengsuan. This was because a long time ago, the sect and foundation of Fengsuan Mountain's orthodoxy were entrenched in it. Buzz. After entering the ruins of End, Lin Sun stepped into the Demon Saint's secret realm for the second time. The power of the Great Way Law that was originally suppressing him also disappeared, allowing his cultivation to return to the 4th level of the Emperor realm in an instant. However, In order to avoid alarming others and attracting unnecessary trouble, Lin Sun still concealed his aura below the Emperor realm. Yin Wan, who had been following Lin Sun all the way, was completely unaware of this. This is the demon saint's secret realm of the ruins of End. Yin Wan exclaimed. Mountains rose and fell, and the world was vast. It was filled with a primitive and ancient aura. The world was enshrouded in thick and surging chaotic spiritual energy. The grass and trees were all crystal clear and flowing with treasure light. It was like a holy land where the gods lived. Obviously, it was Yin Wan's first time here. Lin Sun looked around, and all kinds of past experiences came to his mind. After identifying the direction, he flew straight forward. Brother, where are you going? Yin Wan hurriedly chased after him. To listen to the teachings of the town master, of course, Lin Sun said casually. Seeing that Yin Wan was catching up, he thought about it and finally slowed down. He hadn't been here for many years, so there was no need to be in a hurry. You know the way? Yin Wan was surprised. Lin Sun nodded, but did not explain. At this moment, he seemed to be aware of something and looked into the distance. Yin Wan couldn't help following his gaze and saw a graceful and beautiful figure. It was Meng Lianqing and the others. Yin Wan suddenly understood. Yes, as long as we follow Fairy Meng's footsteps, we will definitely not go wrong. Many years ago, Fairy Meng once entered the ruins of End, and it is said that she obtained a lot of good fortune. Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh. This guy was really good at thinking and actually thought that he was going to act with Meng Lianqing, Genius 1 Second Remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 24:24. At the same time, Meng Lianqing also noticed Lin Sun. She was startled for a moment before withdrawing her gaze. A complicated expression appeared on her beautiful face. After entering the ultimate, she couldn't help but recall the past. She couldn't help but think of the scene where she was defeated by that person. Now that she saw Dao Yuan, a man who was similar to that person, she was no longer as calm as before. Taking a deep breath, she turned around and looked at Lin Sun. My friend, we meet again. Why don't we go to the core ruins together? Everyone nearby was stunned. They had never seen Meng Lianqing take the initiative to invite someone of the opposite sex over all these years, especially the young men around Meng Lianqing. They all frowned, but they still maintained their proper demeanor. However, the way they looked at Lin Sun already carried a trace of suspicion and hostility. Yin Wan was already excited. Her eyes shone as if she was even more excited than Lin Sun. She said, Brother, do you remember what I said just now? Your luck is about to change. Lin Sun's lips twitched imperceptibly. He was a peerless great emperor. Did he need to rely on a woman to change his luck? But before he could reply, Meng Lianqing had already taken the initiative to walk towards him. Her pale golden dress fluttered in the wind, and her skin was as white as snow. Her beautiful eyes were hazy as she stared at Lin Sun. Her red lips opened slightly as she sighed faintly. My friend, please don't blame me. It's just that you're very similar to that old friend of mine. If it wasn't for the fact that you don't have his arrogant and domineering demeanor, I would have thought it was him standing in front of me. Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. No wonder it was said that a woman's intuition was incomparably terrifying. They hadn't seen each other for so many years, but Meng Lianqing had almost recognized him. At the same time, Lin Sun noticed that numerous divine senses were like shapeless spiderwebs that enveloped this area around him, and it seemed to be a type of silent warning that told him not to have any improper thoughts towards Meng Lianqing. Otherwise, the consequences would be extremely severe. If it was somewhere else, Lin Sun would be able to kill the owner of these divine senses with just a slight display of his power as an emperor. But this was the ultimate, after all. Lin Sun didn't intend to cause any trouble before he figured out the background of this town master. Of course, you can't be that person. If it was him from back then, being stared at by so many divine senses, he would have revealed his might long ago and suppressed everyone. Meng Lianqing's voice carried a trace of disappointment. These words made the owners of the divine senses feel somewhat uncomfortable. Someone couldn't help but ask, Fairy Meng, who is that person you're talking about? Meng Lianqing said casually. You should have heard of him before. Many years ago, when the bottomless ruins opened, this person single-handedly dominated the demonic beast mystic realm and caused countless bloody massacres. Neo Tunshin of the Herculean Bull Demon clan, Kong Xiao of the Cloud Monkey clan, Xian Loazi of the Xian'ao clan. She spoke a string of names, and every single name caused the hearts of everyone present to tremble and their expressions to change. Because every single one of those names could be said to be existences that could sweep through the soul oblivion sea. In the end, Meng Lianqing said, these people were all defeated by him back then. If it wasn't for the protection of the life-soul bone talisman, I'm afraid they wouldn't have been able to walk out of the bottomless ruins. At the end, her beautiful eyes were filled with extraordinary splendor, as if she was whispering, back then, he alone suppressed all the heroes, and no one could defeat him. But in her heart, she sighed, is still my nightmare, like a shadow that can't be driven away. Lin Sun, someone exclaimed. For a moment, everyone was agitated. Everyone's expression changed. They finally realized who Meng Lianqing was talking about. Although many years had passed since what happened back then, among the 10,000 ancient clans who didn't know the demon god Lin, who once defeated all the heroes. A group of saints with dazzling halos were all suppressed by him. This matter caused a lot of commotion back then. But now, Meng Lianqing said that the man in front of her was a bit like Lin Sun, so the expressions of everyone present changed subtly. Lin Sun listened and watched quietly. He couldn't help but feel strange. It had been so many years, but there was still someone in the soul oblivion sea who remembered him. This was out of Lin Sun's expectations. I've always wanted to defeat him. Otherwise, whenever I think of what happened back then, I can't help but feel depressed and unwilling. It's like a nightmare. Meng Lianqing's beautiful eyes stared at Lin Sun, and she couldn't help but feel a little disappointed when she saw his indifferent expression. It's a pity that you're not him after all. But no matter what, meeting you today made me realize that if I don't get rid of this nightmare in my heart, it will very likely affect my future cultivation. That's why I'm telling you so much. Lin Sun said, that person probably doesn't care about these things anymore. Miss, you should take it easy. To be honest, if he hadn't returned to the bottomless ruins this time, he would have almost forgotten about this fairy Meng, who was the center of attention. Meng Lianqing restrained her emotions and smiled. You don't understand. Let's go to the core ruins together. With that, she turned around and walked forward. Lin Sun didn't refuse, and he walked forward as well. Yin Wan, who was so excited that her cheeks were flushed, hurriedly followed him. She gave Lin Sun a thumbs up and made a brother, you're good, gesture, and he followed obediently at the side. His eyes were filled with admiration, infatuation, and fanaticism as he looked at Meng Lianqing's beautiful figure. It was the first time he followed behind the goddess he admired so closely. The young talents who'd always been around Meng Lianqing couldn't help but look at each other when they saw this, and their gazes towards Lin Sun became even more vigilant and repulsive. It was as if they saw him as a rival in love. Lin Sun was calm and composed, and he turned a blind eye to them. How could he possibly care about these small fries? If he did that, it would simply be lowering his status, and if word of it spread out, he would be the laughing stock. After all, it really wasn't nice to bully a group of small fries with the status of a peerless great emperor. Fortunately, these young talents were all proud of their extraordinary status. Although they wished for nothing more than to drive away this eyesore Lin Sun from Meng Lianqing's side, they still maintained a corresponding demeanor on the surface. Along the way, wherever Meng Lianqing went, the eyes of all the strong people along the way would be attracted by her. This was Meng Lianqing's current prestige and fame. She was extremely talented and elegant, just like a fairy descending to the mortal world. She was destined to attract countless people's attention. As for Lin Sun, who followed beside her, he also attracted a lot of attention, but most of them were surprised and puzzled. It seemed that they couldn't figure out the identity of this strange man who could walk side by side with Fairy Meng. But most people directly ignored Lin Sun. With Meng Lianqing's presence, her elegance was destined to overshadow others. This was also the first time since Lin Sun returned to the mortal world that he'd accidentally become a foil. If the big shots on the starry sky ancient road knew about this, they would definitely laugh to death. But Lin Sun still maintained a calm and composed attitude, as if in his eyes there was only heaven and earth and all things, but no one was worthy of his attention. This time returning to the demon saint's secret land made him keenly find that it was completely different from before. He didn't encounter any danger along the way. It seems that in order to attract people to listen to Tao, he also spent a lot of effort. Lin Sun was lost in thought. The closer they got to the core ruins, the more cultivators they met on the way. In the end, there were dazzling escape lights everywhere, whistling forward like rain. After observation, to Lin Sun's surprise, there were some senior figures who had entered the Emperor realm among them. Since when did the Emperor realm appear in the mortal world? This discovery was unexpected to Lin Sun, and he was extremely surprised. After all, this was the mortal world. In the past, not to mention the Emperor realm, even the quasi-emperor could be said to be in existence like a dragon in the sky, like a legend. However, when he thought of Do So and the old priest in the Xiao Empire, Lin Sun vaguely felt that perhaps during these years that he was away, some great changes had occurred in the mortal world that he wasn't aware of. While he was thinking, an ethereal sound of a bell suddenly resounded in the distance, reverberating in the sky and revealing a solemn feeling that calmed the heart. The figures who were originally hurrying along stopped talking, and their expressions became serious, even with a sense of piety, as they looked into the distance in unison. On the ground, there was a huge lotus-like mountain range, surrounded by 49 towering mountains, towering and magnificent, bathed in sacred chaotic chi. On the other hand, in the sky above the mountain range that was shaped like a lotus, there was a figure with his back towards all living beings. He sat high above in the 9 heavens, and his entire body was coiled with a myriad of strands of auspicious light and divine radiance. He was like a god of ancient legend, and he'd become the most divine existence beneath the sky. The core ruins. Tao Master. In an instant, countless figures, including Meng Lianqing, revealed a look of shock, as if they had seen the ruler. And when he arrived here, Lin Sun's heart also fluctuated. In the past, Old Toad, and Zhao Jingxian climbed this mountain, and it was also here that he obtained the inheritance of the core ruins and the inheritance of the Dozhan Emperor. Now that he returned, the lotus-like mountain was still there, but compared to the past, there was a so-called Tao Master. Lin Sun looked over, and, at a glance, he noticed that the figure sitting high in the 9th heaven with his back to all living beings was merely a projection of the will. Could it be my 4th senior brother? Brother, quickly find a place to sit down, Yanwan said quickly. Lin Sun turned his head and saw that the figures who had rushed over had found a place nearby and sat cross-legged one by one. The region closest to the sacred mountain was already filled with people even before they arrived. They were densely packed and covered the ground like a black tide. The number of people was more than 100,000. The world was solemn, and the atmosphere was tranquil. Everyone sat cross-legged with devout and serious expressions, and they were listening to the voice from above the 9th heaven expounding on the great Tao. In a trance, it seemed as if they had returned to the primeval times, and there was a Tao ancestor who had established a Taoist field and sat down to teach all living beings. Bursts of bell ringing, like the sound of nature, resounded between heaven and earth. What it described was the subtle meaning of the great Tao, and every word was like a gem, deafening to the deaf, and went straight to the heart. Everyone's cultivation was different, and their comprehension was different. But when they listened, they all gained something. Some showed an intoxicated look, some showed a thoughtful look, some were in a trance, some were beaming with joy. Lin Sun noticed that even some Emperor Realm figures were solemn and devout, listening attentively and meditating. Lin Sun was astonished by the scene. Genius 1 Second Remember website. Mobile version.